Hey, folks. Welcome to So to Speak. I'm Evan Mead.
I'm dying.
No, you're not.
My name's Lyle. Thanks. Nice to meet you.
Yeah.
I got a fever
I'm
today.
Veronica.
So... yes, this is my fiance Veronica.
Ah.
Hello.
Studio applause.
Yeah, I have a new title now.
Yeah.
And we're also joined with married man Josh Weinberg.
Yay.
Yay!
Hooray!
The soda.
That sure was a weekend, wasn't it?
It was.
Yeah.
A
Awesome.
fortnight.
I'm still full.
An eventful fortnight for sure.
I know the leftovers in my fridge can agree.
Okay. So we're talking about books.
That's right. It's book club.
Are you guys avid readers?
I mean, I used to be.
Here's the thing. I'm a slower than average reader, but every single book we're about to talk about tonight, I listen to on audio.
You prefer the audiobooks and
Yes.
than like the physical?
Well, yes. I at this age, I prefer them. But if there's like a friend of mine who published and it's not on Audible or on any kind of audiobook, then I'll shell out a couple bucks and buy the physical copy. I'm not like done with reading forever. I'm always gonna love a good book, but at this point, it's easier for me to throw up an audiobook and listen to it in the background than it is to
That's interesting, because when I read, I guess I don't really read them, but when I listen to audiobooks, I tend to tune out a lot. It's like listening to one long-winded conversation, and I'm never good at those, so it gets a little,
for me,
gets tiring.
The audiobooks kind of like take me out of it, because I like to imagine how they sound in my head and stuff like that. And so when they start doing voices for the characters, I'm like, ew, no, that's not right.
That's not... You fucked up who this character is! Sonic is supposed to be a carefree guy, not some dumbass!
The head cannon. Can we get it back, please?
Yeah.
Griffith!
I mean, audiobooks for me have always been more of a multitasking thing. I'll throw one on and I'll either do some chores, run some errands. It's more of a background thing sometimes, but then other times I will actually commit to listening to it the same way as you imagine characters in your head when you're reading. There are certain series that I may get to tonight, some that I may bring up in casual conversation that I sort of it's like how, I mean, you and Evan are the film buffs here, so you can probably imagine your own like running script of what might be going on in your head as you're reading.
Well, I just imagine how a book. Sorry, how I gotta get it shift gears. I am talking about books, not movies tonight. Although every one of my entries has sold for a movie, I'm not gonna talk too much about their movie adaptations unless
me neither.
Unless I feel like there's something like worth comparing. But every time I read a book, I try to visualize like how cinematic it would look, like how it would play out as a movie.
Interesting. Yeah, because my books. Now that you mentioned it, I just realized that all my books that I've picked have been made into movies, but I don't think all books should be made into movies.
That's true.
Some books are better like as a series, or maybe as like a play or something like that. It doesn't like translate into movie form very well.
Yeah, things get lost in the shuffle when it comes to adapting something. So, yeah, for this episode, we each picked 3 novels. And, Josh, I think you had a criteria where it's like we pick one book from our adolescence to our teenage years and to our adult years.
Yeah, that way it sort of will show a general, like, evolution of not only our tastes, but just, I guess, what sort of things we prefer and what we look for in good reading material.
Okay, can I be
honest? I did not do that.
I did not do that at all.
Well, it'll make for great entertainment value regardless.
Okay. I didn't do that at all. However, my first entry is a book that I fell in love with when I was in 8th grade. The second one is a book I fell in love with when I was in high school, and then I reread it again when I was in my early 20s. And then my third book is like, you know, the book that I fell in love with when I discovered what I want to do for a career.
So what
So
are you worried about? That fits the criteria perfectly.
okay, good. Yeah,
All right.
I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm also not.
I have to go first.
Yeah,
Ladies
Veronica,
first.
ladies first.
Ladies first.
All the other
Okay, guys.
clam up.
This is the podcast I've been waiting for. I love books.
I know.
That's a big thing about me. Am I an avid reader? Absolutely. I read way too much, an unhealthy amount. I think my record of yearly book intake was like 112 books in a year.
Oh wow.
I can read pretty quickly, and I've read so many books that it was kind of hard to pick what my favorite ones are.
Some might say you read at a 78th grade level. Right here.
Yeah.
Bringing it back.
And it's funny that I picked, like, my favorite books of all time are all, like, for young readers, because these are the books that impacted me the most, I guess, throughout my life.
That's fine.
So the first one I wanted to bring up, you should all know, it's Matilda by Roald Dahl. How do you say his name?
Roald Dahl.
Roald Dahl?
Roald Dahl. I read him all the time when I was a kid.
Yeah, you know him. Every kid knows him.
I learned all about his life. He used to be a spy for the British intelligence. Did you know that?
Oh,
No.
like Ian Fleming.
Yeah. Exactly, like Ian Fleming. Oh yeah.
Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy would have been a lot more interesting if it was actually about him. Someone will get that.
Matilda was released, I think late 90s, 1998, according to Goodreads.com.
Let me check. I think maybe they mean the re-release. 1988.
1988. Okay, perfect.
Oh, it's that recent?
So it's an old book. It's really old, but it's so good. I think I read it when I was maybe 7. I think around 7 years old, and I read it at least 10 times because I loved it so much. For those of you who don't know, which I don't know how you couldn't know what Matilda's about, I'll read the synopsis. Matilda's a little girl who is far too good to be true. At age 5.5, she's knocking off double-digit multiplication problems and blitz reading Dickens. Even more remarkably, her classmates love her even though she's a super nerd and the teacher's pet. But everyone is not perfect in Matilda's world. For starters, she has 2 of the most idiotic, self-centered parents who ever lived. Then there's the large, busty nightmare of a school principal, Miss Trunchbull, a former hammer-throwing champion who flings children at will and is approximately as sympathetic as a bulldozer. Fortunately for Matilda, she has the inner resources to deal with such annoyances: astonishing intelligence, saintly patience, and an innate predilection for revenge.
Predilection, yeah.
Predilection. Wow, using big words. She warms up with some practical jokes aimed at her hapless parents, but the true test comes when she rallies in defense of her teacher, the sweet Miss Honey, against the diabolical Trunchbull. There is never any doubt that Matilda would carry the day. Even so, the wonderful story is far from predictable. Roald Dahl, while keeping the plot moving imaginatively, also has an unerring ear for emotional truth. Yeah, so it's about this girl who is just really smart. And through her intelligence, she ends up gaining telekinesis. Spoilers, not really.
Is that another...
Oh my god, Matilda's part of the X-Men!
Yeah!
Is this another boring cape shit story? That some girl who develops abilities, turns on the government and all that, you know? Has to fight a big purple alien?
No. This is way better than Dark Phoenix.
I think the Trunchbull is scarier than Thanos.
Oh,
yeah. The Trunchbull was terrifying as a kid.
Just the way Trunchbull is written, like that's like a kid's worst nightmare of a school principal.
Much too good for children.
It's like all the worst things of a teacher.
Well, she's not a teacher. She's like a principal.
The police
principal, headmaster, same thing.
Yeah, I don't know how the police didn't get called on her for like throwing kids out of the classroom. Basically,
child logic.
Yeah, bullying every child there is, abuse, and she's abusive too. And I think she had like in her punishments
the chokey,
like this little room filled with nails.
Yeah, the chokey.
Yeah, that was nuts. I think.
I mean, if you stand still, you're okay.
Mm-hmm. But you're standing still for hours. She makes you stand in there for God knows how long. I think my favorite parts of this book were definitely when like the Trunchbull gets her comeuppance basically, and also I liked the cake eating scene.
Bruce
Even
Bogtrotter.
Yeah.
The most victorious
Is it
sequence to ever
Dragon
feature a cake. Prove me wrong.
Have you guys seen the movie?
Oh yeah, I
Yes.
grew up with it.
I have not
So,
seen.
anyways, he
I-
started directing.
Danny DeVito is an underrated director. I mean, Evan,
I agree.
you love
Truly.
Evan. You love Death to Smoochie. I'm surprised you haven't seen Matilda yet.
Yeah.
Or Throw Mama Off the Train.
Yeah.
Those are really good
Oh
movies.
my gosh, Evan, you haven't seen it? I totally recommend.
Yes, it's been recommended to me before.
It's one of those kids' movies that actually has a bit more depth to it than you think.
Oh, for sure. And it's about like finding yourself, finding your family, and that it basically says that like your blood family doesn't have to be your actual family. Like you can choose your own family, which is basically
Yeah, that's a
what
good
I wonder if
policy.
a certain blue-skinned alien will get that idea in a few years.
Yeah, for sure.
I like a lot of the subtext as well because it's implied that Matilda is gifted to some degree, but she doesn't get as ostracized from her peers as a result, like you'd think most kids' books about super intelligent kids would be.
Yeah,
But again, the bond between Matilda and Miss Honey is I mean, I guess it does go back to the idea of choosing your own family.
Yeah, it's endearing and it's sweet and it's nice, like you said, that she doesn't get ostracized by her peers because that was such a common trope for many books and movies, especially like teen stuff.
nerd.
Like art. Oh, that's so nerd. You're such a nerd. What a loser. You're so smart.
Well, it's
Like,
not
what?
that she doesn't want to make friends. It's her goddamn parents who prevent her from going to school. She has to basically beg for them to bring her there because she wants to learn and
So is that like
interact.
the inverse of homeschooling?
Yeah, get out of homeschooling.
I guess it's kind of the thing because, like, even with some of the private school tropes, I mean, I've obviously never been to a private school per se for the most part, so
No.
some of that kind of goes over my head a bit. I'm sure if others have, they might relate to it a bit more.
Yeah, I can't
Yeah,
say.
sure. But yeah, I don't have much to say on this because it's been years since I've read it, but like I did read it a lot. It's a really heartwarming story, very entertaining. And I think I liked it a lot, especially as a kid because I was so desperate to find like strong female characters in stories and books because it was at the time it was a lot of like it was very male centered.
Yeah.
And so finding like strong female figures to look up to was um really awesome. So I thought Matilda was a good pick. And of course I looked for that in other sources of media as well, like my shows and my movies. Like I watched Kim Possible religiously.
Yeah.
Kim Possible, so to
You
speak,
know?
coming to a theater near you.
Hey, sign me up for that episode. I will
Yeah.
gladly debate
David
you on
would
the merits
gladly
of
join us for that one too.
what is it, taco something or other.
The Nako?
The Nako.
Nako. But yeah, that's why I picked that one. And speaking of strong female characters, that's the lead to my second book, which is actually an entire series, The Hunger Games.
Nice.
Y'all know The Hunger Games, right?
I do.
I sacrificed one Katniss to summon this random YA trilogy. That's the wrong one.
That's the
wrong
wrong sacrifice.
Don't you mean quadrilogy according to cinema?
Screw the rules. I have money.
Don't even get me started on how. Okay, so
Yu-Gi-Oh episode coming soon.
okay, maybe.
No.
So going back, Veronica, what do you like about the Hunger Games, the books? Because, just a little response to that joke. I've read all the books before I saw the movies. The the movie that best captured the books was Catching Fire. Unfortunately, I think it was totally a cash grab decision to split Mockingjay into two parts because if they had just made Mockingjay into a 3-hour movie, the pacing would have been perfect and would have captured everything that there was in the story.
Well, they're cashing in on the Harry Potter.
Yeah,
trend.
but Mockingjay Part One.
did it of book adaptations. Harry
Mocking-
Potter did it.
Mockingjay Part 1, the movie, derailed the pacing of what could have been a great trilogy of films.
Yeah, that's what I heard.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
completely agree with you, Evan. Like, I'll just touch on the movies really quickly because I don't want to go too in depth. I can talk
Yeah.
about the movies, but that's another thing.
Yeah.
I totally agree that Catching Fire was the best adaptation.
I hear that a lot.
Yeah.
They did not need to split it. They completely could have done a 3-hour movie and it would have been fine because Mockingjay Part 1 is boring as hell.
Yeah.
There's
Like
no-
every part one of a movie.
You mean the first third of a book is rather uninteresting and sets everything up at a slow, deliberate pace? So
Yeah.
things
So how about that
can
10-part Dune saga then?
Oh, God.
It's gonna take
Really?
forever to
like
get to the sixth
Mockingjay
book.
though, because like Mockingjay was very political in the first half, understandably so, because they were starting a war, and then the second half is all the events of the war. So like, of course, that first movie was boring. There was no need for it, and I also didn't like that they focused really heavily on the freaking romance. And I'm like,
Mm.
It's
okay,
a YA novel. You gotta hook the teens in somehow.
I was gonna say it's
Yeah.
YA, so yeah.
It's,
yeah,
I mean,
that's notorious of YA. It's the romance, the love triangle, and the will they, won't they, or whatnot.
this
But
is a
that
bit of a hot take, but Katniss is basically a gender swapped Robin Hood in a sense. The whole bow and arrow kind of thing, you know,
Wants to fight the rich for
well-meaning,
the poor.
noble
Yeah.
character arc.
Yeah.
Okay.
I've never thought of it that way, but that's a good analogy.
I mean, it's a better Robin Hood assessment than the more recent Robin Hood movies.
Agreed.
I like the whole idea of the Hunger Games basically being a more toned down and approachable version of something like Battle Royale, where it's essentially, people
Easy
pitted
comparison.
against each other for unknown reasons, but basically for the entertainment of the elite.
Yeah.
yeah, and that happened again with Squid Games, didn't it?
Basically, yeah.
It's
Yeah.
it's a popular subject, I guess.
How do you?
And of course, it's always the kids that are like the teenagers, like 12 to 18, because I guess it's like one of the things. Well, we'll spare the kids. It's not like Passover where it's like the kids aren't spared.
Now,
That's another thing.
how did you, Veronica? How did you find Katniss as like a narrator? Because the books are told from her perspective.
It was really interesting.
Yeah.
I think when I read this, I was in my teens, right? And I read them all before watching the movies. And
Right.
I think I read all 3 books in like 4 days. And I like gobbled it up. And reading through Katniss, it was basically, I related to her like immensely, especially during that time. Because I was like the same age as her.
Right.
And I think that's why I liked it so much because it almost felt like me. Like these were the choices that I was making because we had a lot of similar personality traits at that point in my life. And we both had this younger sister who we desperately wanted to protect. And then I guess that made me relate to even more because I'm like, oh my God, if I was in that situation, I would do exactly the same thing without hesitation.
That's cool. You really identified with her then.
Yeah, it was one of the first books where I'm like, wow, this is truly me. So I think that's why it still has a like really deep place in my heart. Plus, I think the world is super interesting and not far fetched from what the world could be in the future. I mean, take reality TV right now, like Survivor, those game shows like that. We are watching people basically doing the same thing, aside from the killing, obviously. But
Hey,
it could get to that point at some point.
It worked for the Romans.
Yeah, you know what? I'm glad you brought that up. There's very much a Roman gladiator feel to it, because of the way that the capital and the whole even the way Panem is run as a post-apocalyptic nation.
Panem.
Yeah, the rich control everything. They get all the goods, and even like the way, it may look kind of silly, at least reading about it and seeing it in the movies, how like the capital people are dressed, and their makeup and the exaggeration of everything. But that could be the way we dress in like 100 years time. You never know because even now,
Yeah.
there's exaggerations in makeup. Like the eyelashes are super big. You have to be you have to have this certain look about you that's exaggerated as well. Some even in the '80s, bigger hair.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like fashion changes like that.
There's
so
a whole side group that only has mullets.
Yeah. The whole one of the things I actually like so I like how you pointed out the whole correlation between like the societal commentary bit because I was reading that the author was inspired. One of the things that inspired the author, what's the author's name again?
Suzanne Collins.
Suzanne Collins, right? So Suzanne Collins, I was reading about how she was inspired by the Iraq War, the way the American people just absorbed that on TV and not actually being there. Kind of like how like the world is absorbing the invasion of Ukraine right now through viral videos and live streams and stuff like that. And also just America's obsession, or just Western civilization's obsession with reality TV. So, yeah.
See, you too can write an award-winning book with the power of channel surfing.
Just don't do what the 50 Shades lady did and write something on like your iPad.
Wattpad.
No, I mean that's an example of basically ripping off an established work can lead to a copy being as successful as the original.
Right.
It doesn't take much these days, does it?
No. But anyways, I have just a couple more things to say. Let me think. Out of the 3 books, definitely my favorite is Catching Fire, the second one. I think because like the world is set, you all know all these characters, and there's some some new ones coming in, like Finnick, who's completely awesome, and you don't know what is happening at the same time. People start dying who are really close to Katniss, like
spoilers.
like and stuff. And then that twist at the end. Spoilers, sorry. It's been like over 10 years, but whatever. That spoiler at the end where like they just break into the freaking like game and just take them out of there. I'm like, what the heck? And then there's a District 13 that we thought was obliterated.
Well, it was legend. It was the stuff of District 13 was the stuff of legend, but no, it's real.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why I think, and the game too, like oh god, it's been so long, but I can't remember like the set where they were at. I liked that it was different than the first one because the first one she got lucky basically that it was in a forest.
Yeah.
And then this one it was in the formation of a clock, and it was really cool that way.
A maze.
That's every annually they design the arena differently and they give it a theme. And the theme is usually very cool, but something I feel like it's pointing out is Catching Fire delves into a concept that so the first Hunger Games book covers the story of Katniss in the 74th annual Hunger Games, but the Catching Fire takes place a year later with the 75th annual Hunger Games, and
and I love what the author did with that because it was such a big number, like this commemoration. I was thinking like, how are they gonna continue this story with Katniss out of the games? And then it's like, no, she's going back in.
Because
they call me back in.
Without giving too much away, they use President Snow, who is ultimately the villain of this whole series. He creates a lethal and brutal technicality to get her back because the idea is once you win the Hunger Games, kind of spoiler from the first book, once you win the Hunger Games, you get to live the rest of your life in supposed peace and riches. But nope. Cause
spell shit.
Yeah, no, cause she inspired a revolution and she got people to question the system.
Yeah.
Wait a minute, that makes her the AOC of that universe.
Why they didn't do that in the first place?
Yeah, that's a thing.
Yeah.
I also like that about her that she became this symbol without even wanting to be a symbol.
Yeah.
And she fought being this symbol for so long, and then eventually she's like, okay, I guess I have to because it's for the greater good of everybody else.
The greater good.
The greater good.
Yep. And yeah, I really like the story. Definitely read it. I am Team PETA 100%.
Me too.
Fair enough.
I wonder what Peter thought about Peter.
No, Peter, it's Peter. Okay, everybody shut up and tell me what's going on right now.
And definitely, book PETA is better than movie PETA. I am sorry, Josh Hutcherson. I love you, but the book PETA was 100% better.
Yeah.
Anyways, last book, because I've been talking way too long, and then this one is my all-time favorite.
Oh, yeah?
All-time favorite.
I
Okay.
know what it is.
This is Percy Jackson and the Olympians. Who has heard of Percy Jackson and the Olympians?
I've heard of it. It
Me.
doesn't mean I like it.
You read it to me.
Oh yeah, I made.
You read it to him.
Yeah, I forced him to hear me read to him the first book because I love him so.
To be fair, I had more fun when we were reading Scott Pilgrim together, and I was Scott and you were Ramona.
Yeah, that makes sense.
That was relationship goals.
So Percy Jackson and the Olympians. The first book is called The Lightning Thief. It's a 5-book series. It's hard for me to pick a favorite, but the fourth one's my favorite. I could go on about this series for a long time, but basically, I'm mostly gonna just cover the first book because it's a lot of stuff that happens.
Mm-hmm.
If you like Greek mythology, definitely check this out. It's basically about this kid named Percy Jackson. He's 12 when the books start out, and he finds out that he's a demigod, so he's the son of a Greek god and a mortal woman.
Yeah.
He doesn't know which Greek god at the beginning, but this isn't really a spoiler. It happens in the first couple chapters. You find out he's the son of Poseidon. Whoa, super cool. He can control water. Like a superhero. That's basically what they are.
Yeah. Well, keep in mind, like, the whole concept, we like to call the comic book heroes, like, and the superheroes, like, they are essentially, like, the Greek, the mythical gods of our
You might say they're the
several
American
generations.
gods, not that one.
Yeah. Well, they are essentially, they are like the gods of our time. Because, like, we make stories about them, people flock to see them. It's all we can get in entertainment these days.
Told not to worship the statues. Then some guy comes down from the mountain with these tablets.
Yeah.
So yeah, he finds out he's the son of a Greek god at this camp that his mom takes him to because he's in danger of getting killed by somebody. I don't know who. We don't know who's chasing him at that point, but he almost gets killed by the Minotaur. He ends up killing it himself, and he ends up at this camp for demigods, and you meet all different kinds of characters there with different parents. They all have different powers. Some don't even have powers, but they're just really smart or like really talented and everything else.
So, Professor P's School for Godly Children.
Wait,
I'm
so what if
noticing a
Matilda
pattern
was actually a demigod the whole time?
She was Athena. She was Athena this whole time.
Maybe it'll be in the new series on Disney Plus that's coming soon.
Oh, they're making another.
God.
Oh yeah, Percy Jackson.
I'm so excited for that. Like, you have no idea. Okay, so briefly, Percy Jackson has been adapted many times. It has been adapted to movies that sucked ass. Okay.
Yeah.
The perks of being a subpar adaptation.
Absolutely.
Sorry, Logan, you did your best.
Okay, nothing against Logan Lerman. I love Logan Lerman. He looked like the perfect Percy, but he wasn't 12 years old. Okay, they started him off at 16.
We demand accuracy in our fan casts.
I'm like, what is this bullshit? Yeah. Everybody was pissed off because all the fans wanted kind of like a Harry Potter-esque thing.
Well, that's another thing, and it seems like anything post Harry Potter is always going to get compared to that.
Well,
everything always gets compared to what came before.
It was directed by the same guy, Chris Columbus. He did the first Percy Jackson.
Yeah, but he didn't want to work with kids anymore.
Yeah, I don't know.
So that's why he got like 16-year-olds. I'm like, no.
Yeah, that guy kind of fell off the wagon.
But that guy was Chris Columbus he was excellent at directing kids, and
yeah, he was. Yeah, so did I.
It's a shame he didn't want to do it the right way because it could have been good, but I always thought Percy Jackson would be better adapted as a series, which I'm glad it is now, and they've officially named the 3 stars. Actually, like just a couple of days ago, and I think the series will be released on Disney Plus next year. I'm definitely gonna watch it.
Cool.
But interestingly enough, Percy Jackson has also been adapted as a musical.
I think I remember hearing about that actually.
This musical resulted in my first trip to New York City because I refused to miss it. Okay. Is it a good musical? Debatable. Do I own every merchandise from the musical? Yes. And I've seen it twice. It's not the best thing ever. The music is catchy, of course, but it's not like Broadway standards.
I mean, it's not SpongeBob musical levels of how is the music for this so good?
Yeah, exactly.
And yes, there is a SpongeBob musical.
I know.
Seriously.
I have seen the SpongeBob musical. It was interesting. But yeah, I love Percy Jackson because it was during a time in my life where I became obsessed with Greek mythology. Like I'd go to my library and take out books on Greek mythology and read all the myths and try to memorize as much as possible so I can retell it to like my families and friends and stuff. So then when I found this, it was like, wow. It was like sent from Mount Olympus itself just to me.
Aww.
Yeah, and the fan base is really great. They're all super, super kind, super supportive. The author.
What do they call themselves?
That's a good question.
Olympians?
I guess demigods.
Percy Jackman.
No, I mean like the Percy fans. Like, are they
Yeah.
Perkheads?
No, I think they literally call themselves demigods. Like, that's what the author calls us. He's like, hello,
demigods.
demigod. Whatever.
Ah, okay. A little bit of a cult of personality going on.
Yeah. I love this series so much that I have I think 3 or 4 copies of the first book. I have like double copies of all the other books. I have like every spin-off. After the 5 books of this, he created 5 more books, including Roman gods. So it's a mix of the Greek god characters from the first books with Roman god kids. This world is crazy intense, but it's super entertaining. There's a lot of like action. It's a lot of it's a lot about like learning who you are, where you belong in the world, how important friends and family are, and like how to basically work together and stick together to make this world a better place, I guess.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think that's basically all I wanted to say. Oh, there's also romance. Obviously, I can't read a book without romance.
You don't strike me as the romantic type.
No.
Careful there.
And this romance is top tier. It's the enemies to friends to lovers type, where they don't get together until the very fucking end. So it's all worth it. And yeah, read all my books because they're the best. So I'll take it away to whoever's next. I think it's Josh.
Well, thank you. Well, where to begin? I mean, Evan knows I've been reading since before we ever met, and probably even before then. I used to love reading as a kid. Let me put it to you this way. The year Evan and I graduated elementary school was apparently the inaugural year they made a reading award specifically for the 8th grade. I don't know if they continued it past that, but I can brag about that, I suppose.
Well, as we've joked on this show, if they didn't continue it, there was no need to, because no other...
good. It was just brownie points for me then.
Was that the Red Maple Leaf Awards?
No, that was... No, this particular... Okay.
My school participated in that.
Our school did...
That is a good point. I'll get to that in a sec.
The Red Maple Awards were a thing for us, too. However... This award was particular to our school. It was named after a beloved kindergarten teacher who had tragically and unexpectedly passed away the year before. Yeah.
That's too bad.
Yeah, but when I was a kid, I mean, the library was a place my mom and a bunch of my other family. My dad would take me there. My mom would take me there. I'd go there probably a couple times a week. Maybe I'm exaggerating. It's been a long time, but I always wanted to read. I always wanted to learn about stuff, all kinds of subjects. There are so many series, even making the notes that I wanted to talk about, but I've got to be specific. And when I think about what was one of the series that first got me into reading, I had to look no further than Mary Poppins Osborne's classic Magic Treehouse series.
Oh, right.
Right. This
Yeah,
was one of the it's one of the first series that I read. It's about these two siblings, Jack and Annie, and their treehouse that is essentially a TARDIS. If you've seen Doctor Who,
Yep.
it can go anywhere, anytime, any period of time, and they end up getting into all kinds of adventures with the help of the legendary sorceress Morgana. Or is it Morgan Le Fay? Morgana Le Fay?
Morgana Le
I
Fay.
believe that. Yeah, Morgan Le Fay. So it's got that sort of English mythology in there, but
Arthurian
it takes
legend.
the
Yeah.
relatively suburban setting of Frog Creek, Pennsylvania, and they go to all sorts of places. I mean, I remember I think the first book I had read might have been. Did I start from the beginning? I know the series itself started in mid '92, so just after I was born, give or take. But all the way through school, I had at one point all of the main series as well as a bunch of research guides. There were some like spin-off things. There was like a hardcover book series, like with a Christmas special. The series itself is still going to this day, and it's about to celebrate its 30th anniversary this coming September with a new book.
It's still going?
Yes, they'll
How
never
many
stop.
books?
I did not know it was still going. Holy shit.
Yeah.
Wow.
So the most recent book, I believe, was actually released earlier this year in January. The 36th traditional book. It's every 4 books is sort of split rather into different sort of subplots. There's like
An arc, yeah.
it's sort of like how in TV shows there's like mini arcs in a way. So essentially, you go from them trying to help save the treehouse to there's this dog that actually is this character Teddy who was turned into a dog. There's the most recent series is like animal rescues. So there's one that's like a narwhal, and then there's llamas, and then there's I guess the wilderness is apparently an animal. I know it has to do with California, so I'm guessing forest fires are a thing. But the most recent one is Sunlight on the Snow Leopard, where they have to go to Nepal on a mission to find a ghost because apparently those ghost hunting reality shows just won't leave us alone.
Yeah.
But there was even a set of like Merlin missions books that are for more advanced readers, and I remember reading really a lot of those books growing up. But specifically, there was the entry "Buffaloes Before Breakfast," I believe it is. That Evan might remember this. In second grade, we had to do book reports, and I did a book report on that one. And I think I still have the actual work for it somewhere in my basement at home.
I cannot remember. Okay, I remember that book, Buffalo Before Breakfast. I read 2 or 3 of them. I remember reading The Night at Dawn and Tonight in the Titanic.
Oh yeah, The
But-
Night at Dawn, Mummies in the Morning. Well, really the first like 28. That encapsulates a lot of my elementary school life. But Buffalo Before Breakfast is one I can remember just because it was about they travel to the old West era. So I'm not sure if it's not Civil War because there's a dedicated Civil War book later on. But the whole theme of Buffalo and the plains and the Americana-esque part of it. That was always a highlight, and I believe that has also been a musical as well. That series. I am just checking here. If I can scroll down in time.
I remember I tried reading all these books, but then my classroom was missing just one. And I remember one.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No,
and
I hate that.
it was the Hawaiian one. I didn't get to read it.
High Tide in Hawaii. Yeah, that was actually the very last one back in the day.
I know.
Before they
and
kept
it's
the thing
like,
going.
it's like they didn't have that book, and they had every other book afterwards. I'm like, well, I can't skip one. I'll miss the context.
And the interesting thing about Magic Treehouse is this series actually does have stakes because some of the places they go to, especially later on, there are like actual real world dangers involved. I mean, some of the later ones near the end, there was like Revolutionary War on Wednesday, Civil War on Sunday.
Yeah, Titanic.
There was the one where they go back. It's like they go to San Francisco right before that earthquake happens there.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, they go on the Titanic. They go on
Oh yeah, Tonight on the Titanic was actually a really interesting one too because hot take that was how I think I first heard of the Titanic tragedy. Like, actually, I hadn't seen the movie yet.
Well, hold up now. Why?
Yeah,
Why is that a hot? Josh, why is that a hot take?
Because most
Because
people are
I
familiar
figure
with the
most people
movie.
will have just heard of it from the movie
Okay,
instead of
fair
from
enough.
some kid's book.
yeah, I
Well-
think it was the same for me. I had no idea what the heck that was, and then I had to read up on it, and then I just got really sad.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. I knew.
Wait a minute. So a dystopian future where teenagers have to kill other teenagers to survive is not as sad as that.
But it's
No, I'm still
fictional.
crying.
That
Come on,
darn
I'm not
iceberg.
gonna be-
Yeah. Oh man, like
It's okay when fake people die, Josh.
wow. So
No,
one of the
I got
like,
that.
you know what's not okay? When dogs die in the freaking books, okay?
No more dead dogs. That'll
Can
come
I
back
handle a
later.
character dying most of the time? A dog dying, I will bawl my eyes out.
Yeah, but Magic Treehouse as a whole has been there for me a lot growing up, and even though it can be formulaic, just the fact that also it is a chapter book, but there is a lot of a visual aspect, so you see different representations of where they're at, and especially the research guide aspect, it added additional sort of like supplementary stuff for kids to learn about the stuff in certain books, like for dinosaurs or for other civilizations. I remember actually for one of them, my grandmother actually, we used to go to, there used to be chapters not far from where she lives now. It closed down years ago, but I would sometimes get new Magic Treehouse books, bring them back, and we'd have like a pillow fort in her kitchen, and I'd like read those books, and it always felt like a nice tradition to, keep an eye on when the new books were coming out and get them. But of course, the library, I replaced that later on.
That's
Um,
nice.
So there was a musical from Magic Treehouse in like 2007, which was kind of ridiculous.
I didn't know that. That's crazy.
Yeah, it's based on the Christmas in Camelot book, but apparently it's toured in the United States, which is kind of nice. Had a cast album. There was a planetarium show as well. I guess it was just at the Moorhead Planetarium in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. There's been a musical adaptation of the 42nd book, A Good Night for Ghosts, called A Night in New Orleans, which was a collaboration with Alan Toussaint and Murray Horwitz. And there's some like little community stuff. There was actually, and in Japan, there was actually an animated feature film that was released in. It was premiered in Japan in October 2011. It was generally released in January of 2012.
Wow.
I
And
feel the best adaptation for it would be an animated film.
Well, I mean, especially because like an anime of Magic Treehouse would be really cool because there are elements in the series that lended well to being an anime. I just kind of wish it got an English dub. Something like if that got a dub and it was out on Crunchyroll or something, that would be really neat. But in 2016, Lionsgate actually got the film rights to Magic Treehouse with a script that is being worked on. It's going to primarily contain plot elements again from Christmas in Camelot. So maybe it'll happen. I mean, I don't know. That was over half a decade ago. I have my doubts, but to roll it back to Disney Plus, I feel like that's sort of a series that could serve itself well on there.
Definitely.
It fills a void, but
and those books were like pretty short. I remember reading them really quickly, so they could even do like probably a show on it as well.
Yeah, they're short enough that again, even with the formula of they go to the treehouse, they say the words, it takes them somewhere, and then they say the words to get back. It always leaves a little bit of a cliffhanger for what's going to happen next time, but it's not so heavy-handed, so you can kind of fill in the blanks, but it does leave you guessing at times.
Yeah, I remember those back in the day.
Let me see here. Yeah, so despite the totally not TARDIS, the whole aspect of fantasy and real world sort of combining is probably going to play into my next pick as well because I may not have been a huge fan of Kingdom Hearts, but when it comes to Disney fan fiction, I loved me some Kingdom Keepers as a teenager. So the Kingdom Keepers is a series that is written by Ridley Pearson, who has been known for a lot more of adult novels. But I mean, I first heard of him with this series. Essentially, you take teenagers becoming holographic guides for Disney parks, and then you throw in a bunch of Disney IPs in one place, and then having to stop all the Disney villains from taking over not just theme parks but the actual world. So there's actual stakes. And you take away all the RPGness of Kingdom Hearts because I don't mind Final Fantasy, but if I want to see Disney characters interact, then I'll go watch a Disney movie, not play a Final Fantasy game. That's what this series essentially is. It's I mean, it's not it's not a cape suit movie per se, but there are those superhero aspects in there. But like at night, it kind of feels like this wild mix of it's a YA series to a certain degree, but it's got all these theme park references and nods to the parks themselves and to Disney lore. So if you're someone that likes Disney by nature, you'll probably get a kick out of most of these books because the first time I actually read it was I believe in grade 11 with the second book Disney at Dawn, and my mom actually because she has been working at the library since I was in high school, and she checked out the second book for me one day because she knew I liked Disney stuff, and she suggested to give it a try. And remember how I said that I could like visualize this being like a TV show or movie as I was reading it, or that sort of idea? That's what I was thinking the entire time I read this series. Like I knew I wanted this to be a series or film like series really badly because like this was built for combining all these different characters and universes together. And this is like before the MCU made it cool to do so. This is before everyone and their mother wanted an extended universe for their property.
Yeah, dark universe.
Yeah.
I mean, I actually remember at one point the author had a Q&A on his Facebook, and I asked him, "Do you think there'll ever be plans to have a proper like film adaptation or TV series for this?" And he said that that he had been in talks with Walt Disney Pictures recently, so he's hoping something comes of it, but it didn't seem like anything had at that point. Ironically, uh, our boy Kevin Smith had a hand in making a Disney Plus series for this that almost happened.
Oh.
Yeah.
Emphasis on almost.
Almost, yeah, because the one of the higher up to Disney Plus said it wasn't going to happen because too many IPs combining. Forgetting the whole Marvel and Star Wars original series that are now the shit because this was before that happened. But that same person is also responsible for making The Mandalorian and WandaVision and all of those, big hits. So double-edged sword.
Yeah.
But the fact that there's been a few spin-offs of this. There was, I think, a three-book sort of side series about these characters, Jess and Amanda, who are part of the species known as Fairlies, which are it's sort of like how in Matilda, or no, sorry, in Percy Jackson, it's like some demigods have some abilities, but they aren't necessarily superhuman by nature. Kind of
Yeah.
that idea. There's some sort of above averageness, if I can make that a word, to it, but it's not quite the same as being an Olympian. But the idea of a teenager being these kids being part hologram, it's kind of interesting because it's also in a way the closest thing I can think of to the term going ghost, if you will. Like in Danny Phantom, like you can just control that part of yourself, but it's like if you ever wondered how you would fare fighting against all these different Disney villains and have there being actual stakes. I mean, there is like romance in there. Characters do get paired up, but surprisingly enough, characters do get killed off towards the end, like through the fifth through seventh books, and the whole idea of it being, this character Wayne, who's one of the Imagineers and sort of their mentor in a way, it makes for some really compelling backstory. And there's like other parts where they go back in time to, I think, before all this stuff happened, and again, there's a point where it just kind of feels like fan fiction, and while I did kind of fall off after a certain point, there actually is a sort of sequel series that will be starting later this year called Inheritance, or at least the first book in the series is, where essentially the main five Kingdom Keepers all have kids now, and then they're continuing on. Just, I respect what he's going for, but I also kind of feel like if the series was going to happen, it would have by now, but I think it's a good gateway to, if you like Kingdom Hearts and the, random characters interacting with different Disney universes, and you play Disney Infinity, Disney Universe, all that stuff, you might want to consider giving this a try. I mean, granted, the series itself has been around since the mid 2000s, and the books have been republished once or twice, or at least rewritten with more modern theme park references. But as someone that at that time really liked sort of theme park stuff, it was a neat thing. As someone that's been playing music for quite a while, there was a particular book in my teenage years that really sort of the character I kind of related to, but wasn't exactly like in a lot of ways. But I sort of felt like I could live vicariously through that, and that is Gordon Corman's Who is Bugs Potter.
I gotta remember that.
Sort of, but not really part of the McDonald Hall series. If anyone's read any of those books,
Yeah, I did.
I mean, I believe this copy is actually my mom's originally, so shout out to my mom. But essentially, you have these two guys, Adam and Bugs, or David as he goes by. Adam plays the flute, Bugs plays the drums, but there's this not battle band, there's this international school band competition in Toronto. They they get paired up.
Oh, it's a
doesn't really
Canadian
care
book.
for Bugs' attitude. Yeah, well, Gordon Corman's Canadian. What else would you expect?
Right.
I really love the sort of chemistry in a way between Adam and Bugs because Bugs is just it's obviously the odd couple, comedian straight man kind of pairing, but Bugs really loves drumming and loves all this music to the point where he is determined to disguise himself, sneak out to all these popular clubs at night, play the drums, cause a ruckus, and then get out before anything can happen.
Yeah.
Which in a way is basically, wait a minute, oh no, Gordon Corman predicted Hannah Montana. You got the
Oh, Lord.
best. No. But as a teenager that was just starting to play drums when I first started reading this book, it was kind of neat to see, I wish I had the confidence to, go up to all my favorite bands and, I can play the drum parts better than your drummer can. And it's got an interesting sort of subplot about this actress that's in town, this cursed emerald, and, these two robbers trying to get it. And the two subplots kind of meet towards the end, but it kind of leaves me wanting more. And this is actually a bit of a fun aside. I think about 10 years ago, I had thought of actually trying to put together a rough treatment for a proper, feature or a modernized version of Who is Bugs Potter.
Oh,
but
nice.
I think I only got about 8 pages in and then kind of gave up because I wanted to, pitch it as, he was this guy that was working at a record store, and I didn't really have a lot of ideas for it. But just the gist of, being some guy that doesn't really care so much for playing traditional music and wanting to just do your own thing. I related a lot to the character of Bugs. There was a sequel book, Bugs Potter Live with Nick and Eddie, that I've not read yet, but it's sort of the gist of he's at summer camp, stuff happens, the end.
Yeah.
I didn't even know though that it was connected to the McDonald Hall universe till much later. But
Not bad.
that was more my my true pick. And then for the recency bias, because it's the only book I've read recently, I've been reading this wonderful little autobiography called "Happy People Are Annoying" by one half of Drake and Josh.
Drake, I think.
No, Josh Peck actually really delves into a lot of sort of his sort of post major fame sort of life. It's hard to really describe, but it does get into some sort of dark details. I mean, it does highlight the post-child star aspect of being famous, but you learn a lot about, how he grew up in New York City, when he was like 8 years old and he was doing comedy clubs and he was on a whole bunch of things, and then he really started to take off being on the Amanda Show and in Snow Day before that and other movies. But you also get a lot of the, the growing pains of being a post-child star and trying to have some semblance of normalcy during your young adult years. But he talks about when he was doing drugs in his teenage years and 20s, and the process of getting and staying sober and being a father and how all that's changed him. And it's a very interesting read, and it gives me a lot of context to his life that I didn't necessarily know beforehand. Plus, there is an audiobook that he also does narrate, so I actually found both on the internet, so now Marnie has something to listen to on her drives.
Very nice.
Oh, that's so interesting. I like how biographies give you more information about a person and the struggles that they've gone through. It's cool that he mentioned the child star aspect of it all, because people are always speculating how it must feel like, and sometimes it can be they can have wrong perceptions about it, especially with when stars can go off the rails and stuff.
And it's hard to really understand what people are going through unless you're living it. But it's a really nice insight. I mean, it's sort of in the same vein of a book like Scar Tissue, where obviously the drug part of it is more highlighted because that was a big part of Andy Hughes' life. But it's in the same facet of it gives you more detail into who they are as a person. But the way that he wrote this is actually pretty hilarious. I mean, I'd argue that it's like reading this book is like how when I've been reading stuff that Corey Taylor's written, a lot of his personality comes through in it. Which, side note, Corey Taylor's audiobooks are hilarious, and you should definitely look some of them up sometime.
Okay.
Oh my god. The problem with having to just pick 3 or 4 books is that there are so many authors that I feel like skipped over from my like youth, and I'm kind of ashamed because I'm like, I want to talk about you all. There's just not enough time.
Comment down
I
below
know,
if
I
you'd
feel
like a
the
book
same.
club, volume 2.
Please comment.
Yeah, comment please.
We get barely any engagement, so we need to impress the algorithm, or we'll get our pay cuts.
Right. Wait, we get paid?
Wait a minute, we're getting paid for this.
I wish I got paid for this. Anyway, I digress. So Evan, I guess you're up next.
Okay. Well, so I mean, I not gonna say that I'm like I said at the beginning of this show, I'm a slower than average reader, but that doesn't mean books don't resonate with me. And I just not as big a reader as Josh over here. But as soon as I can read as fast as you, or in other words, at a 78th grade level, right here. Okay, so the first book I want to talk about is a book that okay, I've said it before many times on the show. Josh and I did go to school together, so we studied this book at the same time, but it left a particular impact on me. It was called The Outsiders by S.E. Hinton.
Yes.
Excellent. What is so fascinating about this book is it was published in 1967, takes place in Oklahoma City, in in the time, and it was written by an at the time 16-year-old girl, S.E. Hinton, and it got published when she was 18. And I actually just listened to the audiobook just to refresh my memory, and this was the third time that I've sat down and read the physical copy twice. But I listened to it again on audio, and it's a lot shorter of a book than I remember it being. Probably because like it was on audio and I can process it faster now. But it's a really, and I was roughly the same age as if not exactly the same age as the book's main character. The story is in Oklahoma City in the late '60s. The youth is divided into gangs on the east side and the west side. On the east side, which is the low end neighborhood, you have the greasers, which I think is it's what they call themselves, but I think greaser was like a common term for like, you
There's
know,
a subculture back then.
a kid from the rough side of the track.
Working class.
The working class, yeah.
Yeah, haven't you seen Grease?
I actually have not seen Grease.
Oh, the main characters are all
I'm
greasers.
sorry, Veronica. I know your dad was in the production of Grease, and
He played Danny Zuko.
I know.
Wait a minute.
Yeah.
What is this lawyer introducing?
Right. Anyways, so with the Outsiders, you have on the rough side of the tracks you have greasers, and on the right side of the tracks you have the socias. Now, the socias is an abbreviation for the socials. How they got the reason I think
Ice cream did not respond.
Yeah. The reason I think they get their name is because like they're like the socially acceptable kids in society.
They're the preps.
They are the preps. They come from rich families.
They're the coolest kids you will ever meet.
And what I actually didn't pick up, what I picked up on that I didn't pick up on the first couple times I read the book was a lot of the times that, you know, gang violence goes down and the socias start the fights, but they blame the greasers, and then the greasers get the negative headlines in the local newspaper.
It's a hard enough life.
Pretty much. So, anyways, the book is told from the perspective of a greaser who is called Ponyboy Curtis. Yes, that is his real name. It's an original name, but his dad was an original person. He is the last born out of three brothers. The middle child is Soda Pop Curtis. Yes, that is his real name. It even says so on his birth certificate. And then you've got Daryl, or his nickname Derry Curtis.
Derry boy.
Oh, whoa! That's an unexpected.
That's a deep cut only Evan and I will get.
Yes. But anyways, it's the typical. It starts off as like a day in the life of, like, you know, how these two gangs interact with each other. It's always the Socias are jumping the Greasers, not really so much the other way around, because the Socias are always despite the fact that they're the rich kids, they're always coming to the rough end of town to make trouble, just because they fucking can. And then things start to get a little a little complicated when one night, after an innocent chance encounter between a Soch girl named Cherry Valance and Ponyboy and his friend Johnny Cade, uh, tensions between the two gangs get to an all-time high. Now, if you think that S.E. Hinton ripped off West Side Story, have no fear. It doesn't really go for that, but the stakes get cranked up to the max, and I can't really say much more about it without, like, one person on one side takes things too far, and that's all I can really say without giving away the rest of the story. But what I like about it is how it teaches, like, the importance of youth, and ultimately, if you ever have heard this, there one of the sayings that you may have heard in pop culture that has been referenced in several movies, "Stay Gold, Pony Boy." That
Mhm.
that was inspired by what Johnny Cade says to Ponyboy, and what that essentially means is preserving the youth. But in terms of how he gets there, that's where the whole story plays in. It also delves into brotherly relationships, and coming from a household where there were brothers. Well, I was the oldest, and I I could relate to what it's like to be the oldest. Granted, it wasn't like, my parents were deceased. Although I came from a divorced family, my parents were always there. But I could relate to being annoyed by my younger brother, but I could never really relate to having to take care of him as, like, his substitute parent. So, but I did understand, the constant conflict that the brothers find themselves in. So there was that. Also, but what they explored the dynamics of, like, what it's like to be a hood rat. So Ponyboy doesn't really get himself into trouble very much. So there's all kinds of spectrums. There's Two-Bit Matthews, who's kind of the goofball. He's a slacker. Apparently, he's 18 years old, but he takes the junior high classes just because, like, he failed them all, but he goes just for the fun of it. It's so weird. I also like. Oh, and then um, Steve Randall, who works at the gas station with Ponyboy's brother Soda, and he's he's a bit of an uptight dick to Ponyboy, but that kind of changes towards the end of the story. He's not a crucial character. The crucial character that actually has a lot of depth to him is Dallas Winston, aka Dally. And Dally is this zero fucks given, delinquent.
I
He
like
is
him.
he is as delinquent as a delinquent can get.
Man, I don't fucking like kids. That's the thing. I
Yeah.
just don't like kids.
We're getting ahead of ourselves, but yeah. Oh yeah. So I'll get to that in a second. Essentially, what I noticed about Dallas Winston is, like, if you remember Rebel Without a Cause, like, Jim Stark has, like, a lot of depth to him too, but, like, he has a reason for doing what he does. Dallas Winston is just messed up, and everyone kind of loves him for that. Like, he's still part of the gang. He never takes things so far that they kick him out. He's like the, if you compare, I hate to go back to the superhero analogy, but if you compare the Greasers to the Avengers, he is the Hulk in that.
I don't know. If I was comparing to the Warriors, I would say he's like Ajax.
Yeah, that's a
Like,
better
Yeah.
just the meathead
But,
of
like,
the group.
he's the grenade that they throw into every situation, and somehow it works out in their favor with him around.
Bat up your ass and turn you into a popsicle.
Yeah. Now I'm not okay. Not too much I can say. Yes, this was adapted into a movie, and the movie came out in '84, directed by one of the greatest filmmakers ever to walk the earth, Francis Ford Coppola.
FFC.
But one of the things that is so, mind blowing to me about the Outsiders movie is literally every single person, that regardless of whether they're like a main character or a supporting character, every single person in The Outsiders who plays a character with a speaking role, at the very least, achieved some level of superstardom at some point in their lives.
Yes.
Like here's the thing.
We saw this movie and it was just like, how stacked of a cast was
Oh,
that?
look, okay, okay.
Kind of like Dazed and Confused.
Back in the day, yeah, no, it was very much like Dazed and
That's true.
Confused.
It's a Dazed and Confused of the 80s.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's kind of an apt description. But this is the thing. Like, you got C. Thomas Howell, who would go on to do like other '80s classics like Red Dawn. You had Ralph Macchio as Johnny, who would go on to be the Karate Kid. You had Patrick Swayze, who would go on to be a legend, like stuff like Dirty Dancing, Donnie Darko, also Red Dawn.
Roadhouse.
Also Red Dawn. In fact, you have and Dallas Winston himself was played by, and all these guys were unknown.
Matt Dillon.
Matt
right?
Dillon.
Yeah.
And
Emilio
Estevez plays Two-Bit, and
Rob
he's kind of
Lowe.
perfect for
Rob Lowe, yeah.
it.
Some
Rob-
guy that flew a fighter jet.
Oh, yeah.
I think his name has something to do with a fun thing that Lyle will never do again.
He tends to jump on couches.
Yeah. Tom Cruise is Steve Randall, but here's the thing: Tom Cruise barely has like 3 or 4 lines in the movie, but it
doesn't matter.
That was his first. That was his first screen credit ever. It would take another 2 or 3 years before. Okay, Risky Business and Top Gun were the 2 movies that put him on the map. And then you have I mentioned Patrick Swayze. You also had Diane Lane as Cherry.
Yeah, Diane Lane. I want to
Cherry
mention her.
Bounce. Yeah, no, that is
And
like
a little guy by the name of Leif Garrett.
right. Yeah. Oh, and Tom Waits plays this
Tom
one.
Waits.
Tom Waits has one line in the whole movie. He plays the ally to the Greasers. That's kind of sketchy, and you're not sure if you can trust him. Buck Merrill.
That's Tom Waits.
And it gets better. It gets better because not only does Sofia Coppola have a brief role, but there are uncredited appearances by some guy that wanted to take somebody else's face off, a guy that slaps the bass really hard, and the voice of that bird in Stu a Little too.
Oh, wow.
Oh, yeah.
They all have cameos?
So, James Woods, Flea, and frickin'...
No, not quite. It's the guy that was going to be Superman that one time, but then...
Oh, Nicolas Cage, okay.
Okay, Nicolas Cage... Nicolas Cage is Coppola's nephew, that's worth mentioning. But here's what an interesting story that I found out years later. Nicolas Cage was, as a youth actor, was so obsessed with he wanted to get the part of Dallas Winston so badly that he lobbied his uncle for the role, obviously, but the lengths he went to get it, and the lengths he failed to get it at are quite astounding to me.
Well, yeah, because
Nicolas Cage...
He doesn't want to seem like it's nepotism, right?
Yeah, I believe that was the reason he didn't give Nicolas Cage the part of Dallas Winston. Nicolas Cage, isolated himself. He locked himself in his home, and he basically did he went full on method preparation in order to get the part. Ultimately, it didn't do much, but I think to be perfectly honest, the book does an amazing job at describing these boys' physical features. I guess because it's written by a teenage girl, so who would be crushing on boys at the time. So she describes them really well. When I read the way Dallas Winston was described in the book, I kind of pictured Patrick Swayze playing him instead of Matt Dillon, and I pictured Matt Dillon as Derry. But and something else that our 8th grade teacher pointed out about the characters Derry and Dally that I'll never forget is their nicknames both rhyme with the word daddy, and they both are essentially surrogate father figures. Like, they're surrogate father figures to a degree.
Actually.
And I've never, ever since our 8th grade teacher pointed that out, I'm like, wow, that's so true when you understand how the story evolves. So that's The Outsiders. Great book.
The interpersonal connections between all the characters, especially
Yeah.
I mean, with the socials, you kind of tell they're not really they're in group settings together, but they're not that close. But with the greasers, you really do get the feeling that there's a lot deeper bond there.
Yeah, the greasers
And
are
I really appreciate the book does. I don't know if the movie does as well of a job as doing that as the book, but with the Outsiders in general, the rumble scene, whether it's the way it's described in the book or in the film, is pretty iconic.
Yeah.
Ain't no one starting to rumble without me.
The book, the movie. Okay, one of the things the movie got right was the movie got a lot of things right. But it is worth mentioning that it took a couple decades, but there is a director's cut that does more justice to the book than the original cut of the movie, and but the director's cut has some questionable soundtrack retcons and score retcons.
Oh, just like Donnie Darko.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean,
no, don't make me go down this hole again, Lyle.
oh yeah.
I can't keep making Mad World a meme.
Oh Lord. So,
Well,
but anyways, ultimately, I would say that the original theatrical cut, which is the version that I own, when I compare it to the book, it's still a good movie, but when I think of the book, it feels unfinished. But I like the movie how it knows it leaves it also the movie also leaves a whole other story arc unresolved. I can't really say which one without getting into spoilers, but that's essentially The Outsiders. It's a great book, and I'll close my review on it with something that I listened to on the audiobook that I downloaded. I listened to Essie Hinton talk about why she wrote it. She wrote the book because as a teenager for teenagers, because at the time there were no books about teenagers that felt authentic, and she wanted to change that, and it became a voice for the ages. And what I notice is no matter this book is set, it's technically dated by the time period, but it's still every single theme in this book is timeless.
Yeah, good.
Okay. The next book.
As an aside, the rumble scene also makes for a great music video. Thank you, Atreyu.
Nice.
Yeah. The Atreyu song "Falling Down," the whole music video is basically a reference to that one part in The Outsiders.
I love watching gang violence in movies. Maybe different in real life, though. That'd be weird.
Yeah. I'll watch the Outsiders movie with you sometime. I haven't seen it.
I want to watch that again sometime.
Yeah, it's been a while. I'll watch it.
Yeah. Now, the next book I want to talk about, I was a little older when I was in high school, and to make a long story short, I was in my grade 10 English class. On the first day, the teacher said that the book would be all about cultural diversity, and this was before wokeness was a thing. No, they want to cultural diversity has always been there, and I'm grateful for it because it led me to my second pick of the night, The Kite Runner. Who has heard of it?
I caught you watching the movie the other day.
The other day,
like a few months ago. I don't know.
Yeah.
Time is irrelevant.
Fair enough. So, The Kite Runner, I want to talk more. So, The Kite Runner book is admittedly a more darker and dramatic story than The Outsiders. There is a lot more at stake. But, okay, so I'll give you the premise. In the year 2001, a Afghan man named Amir gets a call from an old family friend named Rahim Khan, and who is residing in Pakistan, and because they've been displaced by a horrific series of events, the Soviet invasion in the late 70s throughout the 80s, the Taliban takeover in the 90s displaced both of them, and Amir is living in San Francisco, but he gets a call from his friend, and then the friend tells him, I want you to come to Pakistan to see me. There is a way to be good again. And what there's a way to be good again means is, the book jumps back in time to the mid-70s where Amir and his servant Hassan because Amir is in Afghanistan. I got to learn about what this country was like before I heard about it in a post 9/11 world. Because I got to be honest, you want to, Josh, you want to talk about hot takes? I never even heard of Afghanistan as a place until I heard about it on the news after 9/11, because that was the first country that felt the wrath of America's military might.
It's hard not to disagree with that.
Yeah. So I did. So when I heard, but all I knew about Afghanistan in a post 9/11 world is it's a third world country that harbored terrorists that did 9/11. So that was my initial perception. So I thought my young mind didn't really know what to think of the place. But once I read this book, I was astounded that before 1979, Afghanistan was a country you could visit, and it was a cool, really cool country to just be a tourist in. So in Kabul in 1975, Amir is best friends with his servant Hassan, and Hassan's father is also a servant at Amir's household. The reason that they still had servants back then was because in a Muslim nation, the Muslim faith is actually divided into different types of Muslims. Like there are Sunni Muslims, which is what Hassan is, and there are Shia Muslims, which is what Amir is. And of course, there's a class difference there. And basically, Amir and Hassan, as children in Kabul, they bond over kite fighting tournaments. The way a kite fighting tournament works is kids fly their kites in the sky, and they use like steel string, and the whole object is hundreds of kites are in the sky over the city. The kids fly them so that the kites duel each other and they get cut by the string. And when a kite is cut, that the kite flyer has a kite runner, and that kite runner runs the kite down, and the kite is taken as a trophy. And for Amir, Hassan is his loyal kite runner, in addition to being his servant and best friend. So, in one kite tournament in the winter of 1975, um, Amir wins a tournament, and with it, the respect of his father, who he believes hates him, but at a great, great cost. And the rest of the story is about an act of betrayal between these two boys. And then everything that's happening culturally in Afghanistan is a backdrop to the story. It delves with how Amir gets Amir and his father flee. They flee Afghanistan when the Soviet Union invades in the early '80s, and then they find they make a new life in San Francisco, in San Francisco Fremont, and then Amir gets married and he grows up to have a very good writing career. But other than that, his sins haunt him no matter how successful he gets. And it's kind of a 4-act book, but the last 2 acts are about Amir redeeming himself through an act of courage that he is summoned back to his homeland to do. So that's really, I can't say much more without giving away spoilers, but and there are tons of plot twists. Uh it deals with the theme of friendship, the theme of family, the theme of father versus the theme of fatherhood, the theme of cultural customs, and I got to learn a lot. I am by no means an expert in the Afghan culture, but I learned a lot about their way of life just from reading this book, and I was stunned when it was over, because it's like, wow, these people that our media makes me think are the bad guys, like, no, like there's some depth to them. Like there's a whole other culture that I got to learn about through reading this book. And it made me in a weird way, like it made me think deeper about the relationship I have with my father. I mean, my dad and I I've feared that my dad doesn't necessarily hate me, but when I was a kid, my dad felt very different from me, and when we grew up, um, I got to realize, how I'm similar to him and different to him, and even though like we've had our rough patches, my dad and I, we're still close. We still talk, and I mean, in a weird way, like by the way, Amir's father kind of reminds me of my father, just with like just with his attitude toward things and the way he just takes on things. And I gotta be honest, and there's a tenacity. Josh, you mentioned my tenacity in your speech at your wedding, and um, I feel like part of my tenacity, part of it comes from my dad. So because my dad's always been a big thinker.
Shout out to Sam.
Thanks. That's great. Yeah, yeah.
I'm
Exactly.
sure he won't hear this for a bit.
You'll see. He's just getting into Boys Like Me, the series I made with the CBC, but
Good for him.
yeah. But
I was going to mention actually with the Kite Runner, it is interesting in that the way it does sort of, at least this is one of the earliest examples of bringing in the nuance of these sort of geopolitical conflicts. I mean, even what's been going on the last few months with Russia and Ukraine, it always seems to they always seem to be presented as this one-sided. There's a black and white kind of thing, but there's always the gray area in the middle that a lot of things don't seem to touch anymore. And I feel like the Kite Runner is a great example of providing that nuance.
Yeah.
That is often missed a lot nowadays.
And I wanted to read the book. I wanted to read the book again, in the summer of 2021 because once Afghanistan got relevant in the news again because the United States formally withdrew its 20-year military occupation, but not victoriously, unfortunately. As a result, the Taliban recontrolled the whole country, and it's back to, unfortunately, this glorious place, this once glorious place, is back to where it was circa pre 9/11, late 90s, pre 9/11. So, but I didn't know much about the Taliban until I read this book, but I learned that they are essentially like extremist Islamic theocrats that punish anyone who doesn't obey their version of the law by torture or death, and it's not a pretty picture. But yeah, no, I like that, Josh, about the whole cultural aspect, and I love how I was able to learn about this culture in the way I was, and it fascinates me. Yeah. That's really all I can say. It's a powerful story, and for anyone who wants to understand any like culture that goes beyond Western civilization, if you want to understand Afghanistan, start by reading this. And yes, the Khaled Hosseini, the author, I completely forgot to mention his name, but Khaled Hosseini, who wrote the book, um, he did go on to write two other books, and I have read one of them, A Thousand Splendid Suns. That goes deeper into the horror of Taliban occupied Afghanistan than the Kite Runner does, but I digress. Yes, this was made into a movie. However, I do not think the movie is directed by a great director, Mark Forster, who has a very eclectic taste in directing credits. Like he directed Finding Neverland, Monsters Ball, and his most Quantum of Solace, one of the Bond film,
one of the worst
worst Bond film, and he also directed Christopher Robin. Strangely enough.
What a weird guy.
Yeah, no, this guy, Mark Foster is probably
generically decent movies.
Well, he makes generically decent movies, but he has the most he has the most eclectic directing choices I've ever seen. So, anyways, the movie is no when I was visualizing the Kite Runner, if it were to play out as a movie, when I was reading the book in high school, I kind of pictured more, as a camera, I pictured, more intimate shots. But when I watched the actual movie, most of the movie is shot in either wide shots or medium wide shots. So it wasn't quite as intimate a cinematic experience as I visualized it to be. But it's a decent movie. I don't hate it. It just if I want the experience of the book, I'll go read the book, and I prefer revisiting the book than I do revisiting the movie. although it is easier to revisit the movie. So that's The Kite Runner, a book that helped add to my perspective. Of the world. Now, my final book, you may have noticed my first two picks were fiction, but they took place in real places, but with a backdrop to real events. This third book is nonfiction, and it's a first-hand account of something that actually happened. So, first of all, we all know The Room, right?
Yeah.
What a question, Evan.
Yeah, you can say you can say that again.
Anyways, how's your sex
What a
life?
question, Evan.
You're always playing psychologist with us.
I cannot tell you about my sex life. It's confidential.
Now, come on, tell me.
No, I cannot. Anyway, how's your sex life?
I can't tell you. It's confidential.
Don't touch me, motherfucker. Get out.
We could be here all day. So,
Yeah.
what is a disaster about?
Okay, you beat me to the title drop.
A disaster, and then occasionally there's a the somewhere.
There's some artistry
so
to it, though.
in the year 2013, the co-star and line producer, quote unquote, of The Room, Greg Sestero, wrote a first-hand account of what it was like to be in this movie. Now, some context. I learned that The Room existed in 2011 because a couple guys I knew in high school went to a screening downtown where Greg and Tommy were actually present, and they got to meet Tommy. He is apparently every bit as weird as he is perceived to be on screen and in this book. So but apparently he's a really fascinating guy. So I didn't know much about The Room until when I got to film school a short while after. I had asked about it. I'd seen clips of the movie. I did see the infamous "You are tearing me apart, Lisa." And I'm like, okay, what's going on here? And then I did see the Nostalgia Critics review of The Room, and I want to learn more. So my buddy, in film school had a digital copy of the movie on his hard drive, so I got it off him, and it took me 3 sittings to watch the movie in its entirety because I was going through my film snob phase at the time, and I was obsessed with what I believe to be quality. So I was actually angry at watching The Room the first time because I'm like, this is so unforgivably bad. How the hell is this? And then I was like, I was under the impression, considering what happened to my buddies when they met Tommy, I was under the impression that Tommy is a cinema troll of sorts, where he thinks he wants to play on what he believes cinema to be bad. But then another classmate in film school of mine said, "Oh no, he intended The Room to be a legitimately good movie." And then I was like, "It is not. It is not." And then it took me 3 sittings to finish the movie, and I felt really drained when it was done. And I was like, yeah, okay, I'm never going to watch this again. So, but then it's 2013, I'm out of film school, and I had just gotten a part-time job in retail, but through a series of peculiar events, my dream to make movies had just been born. I had directed my first short film that year, and I knew that filmmaking was what I wanted to do. And I was talking about this with my friend who gave me my copy of The Room. I was talking with him about this very thing, how I have so much ambition, I want to make movies. And we were hanging out one night when he came back to town, and he closed the night by saying, "Evan, you should check out The Disaster Artist." I'm like, okay. And a couple days later, I went to Indigo and I bought a copy, and I was sucked in, because Greg describes, it's told between it's told between 2 periods in Greg Sestero's life, how he met Tommy Wiseau, and what his life was like when he was on the set of The Room. Now, if you think The Room is a joke, which it is, the production of the actual movie was off the wall bonkers, like next level unprofessional, like everything that you could do wrong to make a movie was done wrong by this crew. And Greg is admittedly, he was thrust into it by association with Tommy, because Tommy considered Greg to be like one of his closest friends, if not his closest friend, probably one of his only friends, if I'm being completely honest. So, the book essentially talks about how I worry that if I go into too much detail, I'll give away the whole story. But
How about you just list a few things that stick out to you?
okay,
Just a few, like a sizzle reel.
okay, it talks about how, well, first of all,
Just a couple
Greg
things.
and Tommy met in a San Francisco acting class in, I believe, in the year 1998, and then they knew each other for a couple of years. Greg got through Tommy. Greg actually got an apartment, his first apartment in LA, and he booked his first lead role in a feature film through the great Iris Burton agency. That was Retro Puppet Master. And also him and Tommy took a little road trip to the famous crash site where James Dean left this world. So that's a little bit about like how they knew each other. But on the set of The Room, it talks about how there is a whole chapter dedicated to how the infamous "You Are Tearing Me Apart" Lisa scene came to be. Did you guys know that Tommy wrote the script of The Room? He wouldn't allow anyone to change the lines, and the one line change that squeaked into the script was actually the hospital on Guerrero Street. And the only reason that line change got in was because that was the only usable audio they had. And yeah, Tommy wrote the line he wrote in his fight with Lisa goes, "You're lying. I never hit you. You are taking me apart, Lisa." But everyone on the crew knew that he was trying to emulate James Dean. So Greg Sestero had to stop Tommy in the middle of his scene, take him aside and said, "You're saying the lie wrong. You're tearing me apart." And as a result, the Tommy Wiseau's version of "You're Tearing Me Apart" has more views on YouTube than James Dean's clip from Rebel Without a Cause.
Mm.
So, and also, the another iconic scene, the "Oh Hi Mark" bit, which is like 7 seconds long. It took half a day to film that, and it took 32 takes to get that right.
Look, Evan, you can't rush perfection.
Exactly. Oh man, you're right.
I mean, what other catchphrases do you think took like way too long to film? Improv is not an art; it's a science.
No, but like the bitch of it is, these are the easiest lines in the world to say, and Tommy Wiseau couldn't say them. He was so artistically inept that and I was reading like stories of how he abused the crew, and I'm like, this guy is kind of an asshole. Like, I know he has a cult following,
Yeah, but see, it makes for a good character project. That's why A24 took it on, because they'll do anything.
Well, actually, initially A24 distributed it. It was James Franco's production company that got the story rights pretty much as soon as the book hit the shelves. Like, James Franco.
Are we sure this one should have been Everything Everywhere All at Once?
Oh Lord, yeah.
That's a different story for another day.
James Franco's production company jumped on this, and as I was reading before I got the news that a movie about this book was going to be made, I was picturing how I would direct the movie adaptation of this, and
it's going to be Evan Me presents The Room 2024.
Oh Lord! Well, here's what I would have done.
Whenever the 20th anniversary is.
The narrative, I would have had it jump back and forth in time, kind of like how The Social Network jumps between.
No, not another This Is Us or Ordinary Joe or The Flight Attendant or whatever show splits between 3 different timelines.
Okay.
I can't stand still.
So speaking of splitting, like I remember I read this book at least once or twice.
Yeah.
I always found the behind the scenes about the set to be really interesting. But then it would kind of cut back to Greg's life and what he was doing, and sometimes it wasn't that eventful.
Yeah.
So I won't lie, sometimes I skipped a chapter or two.
If I listen to it on audio, which I do.
Does
at
he
work
read his own audiobook? Or...
Yeah, he does.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah. Yeah, and he does in the audiobook he does a killer impersonation of Tommy.
Mm.
Yeah.
It's kind of crazy when you think about it.
Yeah.
Tommy made the movie, then Greg made a biopic about, or not the biopic, biography
He wrote
about
the
movie,
biography.
but a book about the movie.
Yeah.
And then they got a biopic about the biography made, and it won an award.
Yes. Oh, that's
it
crazy.
It kind of went full circle. Didn't
yeah.
it?
So in real life, Tommy Wiseau was inspired to write The Room after him and Greg went to see The Talented Mr. Ripley on the night that it won a Golden Globe, and in January of 2000. And what happened was he got inspired to write The Room after seeing Ripley, and he was angry. They were on their way to they were doing like dinner and a movie, and Tommy was angry about the traffic in LA because the Golden Globes are happening and it's award season in LA, and he's like, I don't care, I wasn't invited, so Golden Globe nothing.
Years later.
And then when the Disaster Artist James Franco directed and starred in The Disaster Artist, in keeping with the Tommy tradition. He directed and starred in The Disaster Artist as Tommy Wiseau. The night James Franco won a Golden Globe for playing Tommy Wiseau in the winter of 2018, the real Tommy Wiseau came with James Franco to the Golden Globes and actually walked up on stage with James Franco as he accepted the award.
Yeah, and Greg Sestero was there too. Right?
Life totally imitates art.
Circle.
Now, I kind of wish the movie was a little longer.
Yeah, there's some stuff they cut out.
There's one thing that actually... Okay.
There should have been an extended sequence where some guy in Chicago sees it and it's so bad he decides to record a review of it.
Yeah.
I am me.
Yeah.
What good name? I can't even pronounce my name. Oh, hi, doggy. Ha ha ha.
So,
like, I love you.
Okay, but this is the thing. This is how the Disaster Artist.
Doug Walker.
This is how the Disaster Artist contributed to my life. How the Disaster Artist contributed to my life was this. It told me that if you have a crazy dream, no matter how weird you are, no matter how inexperienced you are, or how experienced you think you are, you can do it. You can do it too. It also made me go back and revisit The Room in a whole new light. And after I was done watching The Room, I was telling all my friends, I am never, ever going to pay to see this shit because it does not deserve my money. It does not deserve any money. Of course, I didn't understand the concept of cult films back then.
Yeah.
But once I started becoming really close friends with Lyle, he talked me into going to a Midnight Madness screening at the Carlton, and I am happy to say that I had a great time, so much so that I went back for a second screening a year later, and if they ever bring back these screenings, I think they have, because the theater's open now.
No, it's kind of open. It's closed on weekends, though.
Oh, so
they always did it.
So if they bring back this
every last Saturday. So
when this tradition comes back, I will keep introducing friends of mine who have not seen The Room by taking them to these screenings, because they are a ton of fun. Like,
so here's an aside.
Yeah.
Do they throw stuff at the screen like they do for Rocky Horror Picture Show?
Yes.
Yeah.
They throw spoons.
They throw footballs. There's people who wave at the screen.
No, people
scream out loud.
Okay, we got competition.
Anytime a camera movement's made, they're just like, pan, 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 go, go, go.
I was just your pen and I think pizza.
Who are you anyway?
Well, but the reason why I'm so happy I'm talking about this with Josh and Veronica, Lyle, because we have had the pleasure of riffing The Room in their presence.
That was a wonderful time.
Yeah. Like, Josh, I think Veronica, I love how flabbergasted you were by everything in The Room. It's like, this is so bad. I don't want to take the words out of your mouth, but it's like, this is so bad. Like,
yeah, it was a crazy experience.
Yeah.
Especially because we watched The Room and then we watched The Disaster Artist back to
That's a
back.
long night.
And I could not believe Josh Hutcherson was in that freaking
He
movie.
got yelled at by your boy Zac
Yeah.
Efron.
Oh, that's
And Zac
He has to
Efron,
make ends meet eventually.
yeah.
Where's my fucking money, Denny?
Yeah. It was yeah.
It was an amazing experience. I don't know if I'd want to do it again.
Yeah.
Maybe
You
with
haven't lived
someone who
until
hasn't
you've
seen
wasted
The
a spoon.
But yeah, I was Josh, you had some great riffs for that film. But anyways, that
With
was
the Disaster Artist, it's kind of a weird thing because the book is a really interesting insight into a literal train wreck, but the movie is. I'm not going to be all hipster, but the movie of The Disaster Artist basically made The Room quote unquote cool to mainstream people. And as someone that, yes, had seen the Nostalgia Critics review of it in like high school, it kind of felt like, people didn't quite get it because they were only seeing the movie version of a book instead of the original movie.
yeah.
Well, they recreated a lot of stuff shot for
Yeah,
shot.
no, the shot for shot recreations are really well done. Like but to be fair, they are lit a lot better than The Room was.
And the
lit.
audio is a lot better.
The audio is
Yeah.
crispier.
There's no
and
dubbing.
Yeah.
What the hell?
Yeah.
Ahahaha.
So when are we going to get a book about the production of Kentucky Fried Movie, which will lead A24 to make a movie about that, and in turn will lead people to check out the glory that is Kentucky Fried Movie?
Hey, if they
Well,
if
they're
they
gonna
can
make
make
a
a movie,
movie.
if a movie like The Founder can get made, then I don't see why not.
They're making a
No,
movie
Kentucky
about.
Fried Movie is not the same thing.
Oh, okay.
They're making a movie about the making of The Godfather.
Oh, that'll be interesting.
I don't know why. Apocalypse Now would
Yeah,
have been a better story.
no.
On the topic of
They already kind of did
FFC.
that. It's called Tropic Thunder. That's a parody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
So those are my books, and I'm happy. I got tons of stuff out of all of them, and they influenced my life and my upbringing and my character. So that's it for me. I am closing the book, so to speak.
Oh my god. All right. Hi everyone.
Hi.
Lyle here. Okay. So you guys talk about your early experiences with books. I used to read an awful lot when I was a kid. Like, I remember, I would hate recess, so I'd just sit in the library instead when no one was looking.
I did that too
Hate
sometimes.
recess?
I hate recess, no, because I was chubby. I didn't like playing outside. I always got sunburnt easily, so I just wanted to stay indoors. So, yes, poor little Lyle. Becomes the big Hulk that you see today, dying of fever right now. But yeah, I used to read a lot, and I remember I was reading, I read all the Harry Potter books naturally, and I remember my dad would be so shocked when he saw something as big as Order of the Phoenix. He's like, God, I never read books that big when I was your age, Lyle. It's like a phone book out there. It was.
Well, if you ever read a phone book.
Well, the best comedians can make it work, But yeah, you go. I guess if I had to look at a lot of my early adolescent book reading. Oh, before I start, I noticed lately, it's very hard for me to read. Now, I used to do it all the time when I was younger, but now I can barely do it. I can barely finish a book. And I don't know why that is. I get very easily distracted. I don't know if I'm fried by fluoride or something, but if that's the term. But it's just I my synapses aren't able to focus on all that. So that's too bad. But hey, I finished one of my books today, so I managed. Yay, go Lyle. So my first book for today is it's a young adult novel, believe it or not, and it's written by Kenneth Oppel, and that is 2004's Airborn, part of the Sky Trilogy. And I'm not sure if you have read this or not, but the way it works is that it's kind of set in a world where airplanes were never designed, and so instead Zeppelins became the main form of air transportation. So it's almost
They have lead in them.
Yeah, the Led Zeppelins, and I lost my train of thought. God damn it. But yeah, so it's a steampunk novel, and it follows the young adventures of Matt Cruz, he really wants to be a sky captain. But the problem is he's just a cabin boy, and he's very poor, and he's trying to support his family, who live in Lionsgate, BC represent, and we get to see how passionate he is about the sky and how much he loves it. It's like a young seafarer and his love of the sea. You know, it's that kind of passion. And his father did it before him, and he comes across a man who's been marooned in a hot air balloon, and he finds him and he's like on the brink of death. He's been out there for ages, and when he finds him like in the middle of the night, he just says, "Kate would have liked this," and passes on. And what ends up happening is as Matt continues to be like he set course on another cruise. There's a young woman who joins the like literally just like flies on top of the Zeppelin, and her name's Kate DeVries, and she's trying to finish her father's work. So that was the man who passed away in the intro of the book. And apparently, what they found is like this creature of unknown origin that lives entirely within the sky. So Matt wants to help her, and she really wants to finish her father's work. There's lots of other things that happen in the book. I don't really want to get into the entire plot, but there's sky pirates. There's being marooned on an island. There's a mutiny. Like it's a very adventurous story, and I like it a lot because I can tell Kenneth Oppel actually did his homework on how like navigation would have worked back in those days, and you get like a very nice sense of the geography of the Aurora, which is the name of the Zeppelin that they use, and
Not the Pandora.
not the Pandora, the Aurora, the Borealis, situated entirely within your kitchen.
Yes.
Unfortunately, the sequel is now called Skybreaker: The Way of the Sky.
Yeah, it's a start of a trilogy. There's also Skybreaker, in which
I think I want to check this out because this does feel like what if the Silverwing trilogy was with humans and more steampunk?
yeah. If you like the Silverwing series that Apple also wrote, then I'd highly recommend. I actually think I prefer this series better, to be honest with you. There's also Skybreaker, where the duo has to get on board of a frozen airship that's lost in
and
the Arctic.
Star Climber.
And Star Climber, this is a wild concept. So they want to get into space. So their method of getting there, just because there's no jet fuel or anything, this is like the early Victorian era. So they build a massive cable attached to an anchor that's just kind of floating outside of Earth's orbit. They had to build a massive sky tower to breach the atmosphere, and they put this like little elevator there, and it goes do 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 do. Takes like a week or something, but that's how they get up to space. But then horrible things happen along the way, and that's the third book. I will not get into.
I thought it was
thank
just
you.
about rock climbing in space.
I mean, that'd be interesting to rock climb in space. We
I
landed
like
on
how
the
they do,
moon.
though. It's fascinating because it's basically saying that the Wright brothers never existed and all. It's like the whole alternate history angle.
Oh yeah, it's definitely an alternate history, and it's fascinating to see. Like I really love the imagery in this story. Like I'll read the first page, and I'll be like, I want to finish this story. I don't care what I'm doing. I just want to. I cannot put it down. It was one of the first books I ever reread. I think I've read it like 3 or 4 times now. I still haven't reread the other two, but I remember I liked the third one a lot. I don't remember the second one as much, but yeah, it's a very solid trilogy, and it's cool at Camp Apple. Speaking of the Red Maple Awards, my school got sent to a field trip there, so we went to Toronto, and we got to watch a seminar by him. He was on he was on the stage. He was
Ooh, very
receiving an
nice.
award. He was telling us how much he enjoyed the writing process and all that, and it was really nice because it's like I love your Sky trilogy. And I'm not saying you have to make a fourth one, but I'd like a fourth one. But that's besides the point. I like a lot of the characters too. Matt Cruz, I feel like I definitely identified with the most when I was younger because he's like adventurous and kind of like mild mannered at times. He seems a little socially distant at times because he spends so much time in crew's nests, and he just he has an air of professionalism, but like he's still a kid, so there's some hurdles he always has to overcome. But Veronica, Kate DeVries, I like her a lot, and she kind of reminds me of you because she's
Aw.
oh, she's spunky. Like she literally has this lady chaperoning her the entire trip, and she has to come up with an
And then
increasingly
she just drugs her.
yeah. She actually does at one point.
Wait, Kate the who?
Kate DeVries.
Okay, I'll have to look that up.
Kate DeVries, yes. Yeah, then she has to like, oh, Miss Simpkins, Marjorie, there's a bottle of wine in the icebox. Make yourself at home. Me and Matt are just gonna have some hot chocolate down by the gully. He's like, oh, yeah, you do that. So some people just aren't good at their jobs. And it's funny. The chaperone appears in every single storyline. She's always wrapped up in all her adventures. Um, this is the only book in my entire list that are of my three that I'm talking about that hasn't been adapted. Oddly enough, but that's not for a lack of trying. The book was originally going to be adapted into a film by Stephen Sommers, who you all know was doing The Mummy and Van Helsing, but we don't talk about that one. And unfortunately, in 2008, Kenneth Oppel indicated that the project had been dropped, which is too bad. I think Stephen Sommers would have made it really fun. That would have been a fun movie. But then 2012, Halifax Films and Michael Donovan teamed up, and they tried to option the book. And Oppel was hired to write the preliminary script, and he would have been an executive producer, but nothing happened. So a lot of fans ask him, "Hey, when are you making this into an adaptation?" And Oppel says that the most recent people have dropped out considerably, and he still retains the rights to his own book. So no one has been able to pull this off. I imagine it's probably because steampunk isn't very marketable. You look at movies like Treasure Planet or
Which is great.
Sky Captain of the World Tomorrow or League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. Even John Carter, to an extent, is kind of steampunk. And all these movies do pretty terribly. It's not a genre.
Also because there's the lack of promotion or lack of interest.
Exactly, like steampunk is a very niche genre. But I do think, well, I mean, Series of Unfortunate Events is kind of steampunk in a way.
Yeah.
And I think that was a pretty decent Netflix show actually. So maybe Apple try to get people involved in the in making a Netflix show. You could do 3 seasons and each be the book. You get
I'd
all the
still
time.
say a new Silverwing series should be first as the Trojan horse to get an Airborn adaptation going.
Fair enough. That one's a more popular series. I don't disagree. Yeah, I guess to wrap up my thoughts, like I definitely enjoy the series. I would love to reread it again. Actually, I don't have the copies anymore, but that could change because if I think I always ask myself if I could, like, how Denis Villeneuve, he was like, oh, ever since I was 9, I always want to adapt Dune. If there's one thing I'd really like to adapt, it would be Airborn.
Do it. Do it. Do
Yeah,
it.
like how Louis Bugs Potter is sort of my sort of pet project. Airborn could be yours, but without the Australian rock band Airborn.
Yeah,
Or the trampoline place called Airborn.
I'm lame because my dream adaptation is a video game. I'm not gonna.
It's one of the biggest video games of all time.
We could spend all day going over our dream adaptations.
Yeah. Speaking of flights of fancy that are above and beyond the realm of reality, my next book is something that encourages you to always bring a towel and to never panic. And that is Douglas Adams' The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
Spot on.
Spot on. Yes. I literally just finished reading this today because while I was laying in bed I just wanted to I wanted to refresh because it's been a little while since I read this. But I don't often read comic stories like stories of comedic nature, but this book had me laugh out loud a few times. I guess I can explain the first 20 pages because it's kind of like the most insane 20 pages ever. So, you're Arthur Dent. You wake up.
You are Arthur?
Well, and now back to Arthur Dent. Yeah. You woke up one day, you went down, got some breakfast, and a fucking bulldozer crashes through his house, and he's like, hey.
It came in like a wrecking ball.
Yes, everyone around him his house is about to be demolished by an evil
Oh God, he's gonna have to live in the Maison Derriere.
yes, by an evil construction worker with the genetics of Genghis Khan. That's important for some reason, and I'll mention that later. But then his best friend in the world, Ford Prefect, is like, "Hey, want to get a beer?" He's like, "Oh, very well." So while they're having about 8 glasses of beer, Ford is all like, "I hate to tell you this, but in about 5 minutes, none of this is gonna matter." And he's like, "What are you talking about?" Well, there's a sorry, I forgot to mention the purpose of him having his house destroyed. They're gonna build a highway through his house, so the land is gonna be converted into a highway. So, uh, Arthur didn't like that. So then Ford's like, "Well, it just so happens that an alien species is about to arrive on this very planet, destroy it, and build an intergalactic highway." So, what a day for you, huh, Arthur? He was like, "Oh, I don't believe a single thing you're saying to me, but okay. They're destroying my house. Let's stop them." And then all of a sudden, like thousands and thousands of airships arrive on the crust of the earth, and they're like, "Excuse us, don't mind us, but your planet is about to be destroyed in 2 minutes. Have a good day." So then Ford grabs a towel, wraps it around Arthur, sticks his thumb out with a device attached to it, and he's immediately transported to the Vogon space system, where the evil Vogons have demolished Earth and are continuing their dastardly deeds of building a highway. And from then on is just, God, I don't even know. It's just a lot. This is a book that has many, I like to call it tangential storytelling, because let's say, I'll give an example. So let's say they arrive on the Heart of Gold, which is a spaceship that has a sort of like a interdimensional randomizer generator. I forget what it's called. It has a very specific name. But what it does is it basically transports you throughout the galaxy in less than a nanosecond. But as you're inside this thing, anything can really happen. So imagine interdimensional TV from Rick and Morty, but in a book. So 1 minute you're
Oh boy, more opportunities to run into pickle hat.
yeah more.
What have I done?
Oh no! Imagine you're arriving on a planet crust. You're arriving on the atmosphere. You're being shot at, and you look through the window, and there's a sperm whale falling out of the sky, and you know, like you do, the author decides to spend a good page describing the thought process of this sperm whale as it comes to terms with the fact that it is falling through the sky and plummeting to the earth.
Wow, this is just full of like dry British comedy.
Oh, it's incredibly wry and dry and
dry.
And pie in the sky.
I don't remember every single there's on the Heart of Gold. I always forget his name. Zappis Brebox, I believe his name's. Hold on, let me look this up. I always forget his name because it's a weird name. Where Zaphod Bradle Box. There's my phone.
Feeble Brox.
Feeble right. Yes. So he is the president of the galaxy.
So that means that technically Zephod ranks above the Guardians. Take that, Disney.
Yeah, eat that.
Ironic.
And he's played by Sam Rockwell in the movie, so there you go.
Nice. Who was also in Galaxy Quest.
Yeah, and Iron Man 2. So
God, this is a big galaxy brain take.
Justin Hammer, man, he's out to get you.
Yeah.
But yeah, he steals the Heart of the Gold because for some unseen reason he wants to find something.
I thought it was because he was searching for it and he's getting old.
Yeah. And there's also, I think her name's Trillium? Trillion, that's right. Trillion, like a trillion years. And then there's Trillion, who Arthur actually encountered at a party once. Then Zaphod kind of went down to the earth and just like took her away. And it's like, hey, don't get with this lame-o, get with me instead. And she's like, alright. And so now she and Arthur are the only living humans in existence. So, hey, you did something right.
So it's the last man on Earth before the last man on Earth, but in space.
Yeah, in space. And, yeah, there's a lot of other tangents I really like in the story. I love when, they have to find one of the oldest computers in existence called Deep Thought. And so these two programmers develop them, and they're just like, all right, so you're the strongest computer in the world. She's like, actually, I'm the second smartest computer in the world. What are you, probe machine? He's like, no, not that dumb computer, the other one. I'm not gonna talk about it. It's enough. All right, all right. What is the meaning of everything? What is the point of all this? I'll have to think about that. How long will it take you to think about this? 7.5 million years. 7.5 million years later. The answer to life, in all its entirety, is 42. 42! It took you 7.5 million years to come to that conclusion? Oh, there was a lot to think about. The answer, the meaning of life, is 42.
This really does feel like this is the Cornetto quadrilogy before it even before Edgar Wright was even born.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's
around that time.
Well, that's the thing. There's a lot of Python-esque kind of humor. It's a lot of
a lot of Python too.
Yeah, there's a lot of sarcasm. There's a lot of witty remarks and repartee. Easily, my favorite character in the book is none other than Marvin, the paranoid android, who totally did not inspire a Radiohead song, by the way. I'm just putting it out there. I don't think Tom York has read this book. I don't know, because when Zappa says, "Okay, computer," you're looking at your Macintosh, and you're like, "Okay, computer, let's make a podcast today."
It's a very going to be a record now called Hey Siri.
Hey Siri. All right, Siri. The spiritual successor to a Radiohead album. That's what they would do. Marvin is probably easily my favorite character. He's just this miserable robot who doesn't even want to exist. He doesn't want to do anything because he all knows he constantly thinks about how pointless everything is. There's one point where Zappa is like, "Freeze!" Like, "Freeze, I'm a robot, not a refrigerator." I don't know how to tell you this, but I'm terribly depressed. And I didn't. There's like 5 books in this series. The complete trilogy of 5.
6, actually.
Oh, 6. I guess there was a new one.
Technically, well, the last one is from 2009, and it's actually written by the creator of the Artemis Fowl series. So.
Oh, okay. So it's not written by Adams himself because he passed away in 2001.
Yeah. So technically, 1992 is mostly harmless. Is the last proper one.
All right, because I have the compendium here. I read the first one twice, and I got into the second one. There's a hilarious bit where Marvin has to like kind of hold the fort while the team goes down to like continue their mission. And while he's waiting, there's this evil the battle droid that comes up to him.
Roger.
Yeah, Roger, this massive tank. And it's like, "What are you?" It's like, "Oh, I'm here to put a stop to you." It's like, "Well, what are you armed with?" "Oh, nothing. My compatriots have left me here to defend themselves while leaving me with nothing." "Oh, you don't even have like one of these massive blaster devices?" "No. How does it work?" "I'll show you." "I'm gonna blow a hole. I can blow through walls." "Can you blow through floors?" "Let's find out." Falls through the floor. Ah! What a
That was easy.
What a depressingly stupid machine.
I think I should get. I mean, I heard of the book briefly, but it wasn't until the 2005 film adaptation that I was really familiar with the series.
Yeah, that one. I might rewatch that one tonight actually, but I remember it was fairly okay. It does a good job capturing some of the surrealist humor of Adam's vision, and he did help write the script as well before he passed away. Unfortunately, never got to see the light of day, but yeah, it's not a bad adaptation. A lot of people seem to hate it. I don't think it's that bad, honestly. I think some of the cast do a really good job, especially Alan Rickman as Marvin. Because my God,
I mean, it's on Disney Plus, so I should give it a watch sometime.
Oh, is it on Disney Plus? Great.
I mean, I assume it is. It was Touchstone's involved. It's got to be.
Okay.
It's fascinating to see that this series is like, it started off, there was a radio, there were radio specials about it. There was a TV show in 1981. Yep. There have been 2 video games over the years.
There's even been musical albums.
A bunch of things.
Yeah, and musical albums too.
Wow, yeah, the most recent thing was another radio special in 2018, Hexagonal Phase.
Of course.
Oh, okay, apparently 2009's And Another Thing also had some additional unpublished material by Adams in there. So, I don't know, I'm sure most fans would consider it sort of like a non-canonical sixth book, but yeah, it's really interesting to me that it kind of sounds like I almost wanted it to be a fifth Cornetto movie, but just like a space opera, like, a Galaxy Quest for the new generation, but like with original characters.
Yeah, it would be nice to see more things like this where it's not soaked in cynicism and gore and all that. But yeah, it's interesting because like Douglas Adams himself, he was a backpacker a lot in his spare time. So in his youth, he wanted to see the world and get some perspective. So he'd travel across the countryside and just try to find easy ways to like earn a little bit or like meet interesting people. So I think that a lot of that life experience translated into this book because main characters aren't really seeking that much. They just happen upon a lot of strange events and like they'll eat some peanuts and drink some beer and just be like, oh, well that just happened. To the next. Yeah, it's like literally the book ends is like, hey, Arthur, are you hungry? Let's go to the restaurant at the end of the universe. Hard cut.
Well, it's kind of nice because it's a good segue into the next book.
Yeah, if you have the
It makes
compendium,
sense.
if you have the compendium, you flip the page and it's right there.
Does it have any special like bonus things compared to just getting the books individually?
Yeah, it literally says with bonus materials and some unhelpful remarks from the author. Yeah, I like his writing style. Douglas Adams, it's like he has the rule of thirds down perfectly, where he says two normal things and it ends with like a non sequitur. It's like setups are just so absurd that I really end up remembering quite a lot of it. And it's nice seeing like even the banter between Arthur and Ford. Like Arthur's like obviously the fish out of water, who has no idea or any comprehension. He's like Jack Burton from Big Trouble in Little China. Like he has no idea of the machinations of this universe, and he's kind of just along for the ride. And you have Ford, who developed the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy himself, but he doesn't have time to explain absolutely everything to Arthur, so he's kind of just like a little bit impatient for the most part. And it's just like, oh, we're doomed. Uh, resistance is futile. Well, now, how do you call that a positive attitude when you're traveling with me?
I gotta see this. Like, I gotta read this. I gotta see this.
I got a copy right here if you want. And yeah, it's on Prime. I'll have to rent it, but we can watch it later if you like. And yeah, so I've covered 2 science fiction novels now. And now I'm going to cap things off with a science fiction graphic novel. Yay. I guess this is kind of cheating, but I'll be honest with you.
No, it's not. If it has pages, it counts.
Alright.
If we read it in high school, then we're going to talk about it. Probably. Not really. There were too many things on my list.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because like for graphic novels, I could have went with like the Bone series. I grew up with those a lot. Or,
Underrated.
A lot of stuff by Greg Close I'm quite fond of. I've also gone with other books from this author, but for me, I think definitely one of my favorite books of all time would have to be none other than Alan Moore and Dave Gibbons' Watchmen.
Yeah, buddy.
Now, I don't know what I'm going to say to make that hasn't been said before. Often heralded as like one of the greatest in the medium. But Watchmen, much like Airborn, is set in an alternate timeline where costume superheroes, not necessarily superhuman superheroes, exist and have caused a slight shift in history up until
An incredible discovery, if you will.
Yeah, an incredible discovery. I'll talk about that a little later. But you have everything's kind of tiki-tori until the development of Dr. Manhattan, or should I say the accidental development of Dr. Manhattan. And at that point, all of history has changed forever. We're talking like America wins Vietnam. Nixon is in office for like at least 12 years. Like he's not even allowed to have.
Hey, comedian hadn't had as much fun on American soil since Woodward and Bernstein.
Oh, what does that tell you? And then you also have Russia landing on the moon first, and then that was in the
No,
movie.
in this reality, they win the space race,
They
but
win the space race.
Dr. Manhattan
Shows up
talks
to
to
greet
Neil
him.
Armstrong.
Oh yeah. Oh okay. Yeah, he shows up to greet him. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Maybe that was something they threw in for the movie.
I think so. Yeah, because the opening sequence of the movie isn't anywhere in the book.
To be fair, the opening sequence of the movie gets the artist who creates the big, the big MacGuffin that comes in at the end. The artist he's there, but he doesn't play any part in the movie. He's a bigger role in the book.
Are you talking about the painter?
The painter, yeah.
Evan, that was Andy Warhol.
Oh, Andy Warhol?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. No.
He was painting Night Owl 2, but in different color templates.
Oh, okay.
You thought that guy was the guy in the book? Interesting.
Yeah.
I never heard that before, but that's
No.
all right. That's all right. It's all right. You didn't know. Yeah. So where do I begin? So let me find the exact date.
October 12th, 1985.
October 12th, 1985. Dog carcass in alley this morning. Tire tread on burst stomach. The city is afraid of me.
I've seen its true face.
A comedian died tonight. Yes. Sorry, I didn't do my best. I'm already congested enough. I'm already congested enough already. I don't want to do a Rorschach voice tonight. Yeah, so after the I don't know what's the best word to say. After the shocking death of a retired superhero named the Comedian, one of the still active heroes, Rorschach, is on task to gather the remainder of his team to kind of hunt down and figure out what happened to the Comedian, because he doesn't believe that it was a suicide or anything. He believes that there's a conspiracy.
And he's kind of the outlier in this theory.
Oh, yeah.
Because everyone's like, he's crazy, and he is. Rorschach is crazy.
Pretty
No,
crazy.
he's just a little unwell. I know. Right now, you can't tell.
Also,
the character of Rorschach as a whole, like with the whole, like the face will constantly change, much like the inkblots themselves. And when you find out the backstory, it is sort of that like dark, mysterious, especially with the whole trench coat. It's basically like a mix of L.A. Noire before that was a thing, with like the whole like dark, brooding persona that a lot of high school boys probably liked.
Yeah, no. When I was younger, I definitely loved reading Rorschach's perspective, but now that I'm a bit
Donnie Rorschach.
Donnie Rorschach.
Oh Lord.
Yeah, but I was like, as I get older, it's kind of interesting for this book. I'm not gonna get into the story because I'd be here all night. But what I like to do,
there's only 20 of them. And remember, back in the 80s,
20.
It was released in serials, like a normal comic. It didn't become a graphic novel till later.
I guess I'm just used to the compendium version.
Yeah. Well, it's always sold in the compendium, but you're right, Evan. It was sold in issues. That's right. It was a nice run, actually. In a really, really turbulent time in U.S. history too.
Yeah.
During the height of the Cold War, so it was very timely at that time, I guess you could say. Which is why clocks and all that play into a special motif of the film.
Speaking of clocks, the Doomsday Clock is probably I love what Dr. Manhattan says about when he's questioned about the Doomsday Clock. And you've talked about Rorschach. Talk about Dr. Manhattan for a second.
I was going to get into the characters. Like, to me, a picture of a clock is about as nourishing as a picture of oxygen to a drowning man.
Yeah.
But, yeah, God.
And then you just show him clocks by quote, like da 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 da.
Well, he's constructing his mechanism on Mars. Yeah. And also the smiley face, which was a big motif back in those days.
This is a bit of a weird thing. It's kind of like there's the smiley face from Walmart. There's the three-eyed smiley face in that movie Evolution, which yes, that was a thing. And then there's this one.
Yeah, and even in Repo Man, there's like a cult that uses smiley face buttons, and they're like UFO like crazies. There you go.
And there's a smiley face from Dazed and Confused.
And Forrest Gump. It was all developed by him. Another movie that features alternate timelines, alternate history.
Oh my God, Forrest Gump and Watchmen are in the same universe.
Oh Lord!
What if Forrest was the one this whole time? I knew it.
Forrest Gump is
run, Forrest, run!
Forrest Gump is Ozymandias.
And Bubba was actually Bubba still gets the Shrimp Empire.
Forrest Gump is Ozymandias. That's too funny because world's smartest man. I'm not the world's smartest man.
But I know
What?
what I must do to protect mankind.
Yeah.
I built an octopus and
Whoa!
that I found while
Okay,
I
we're kind of
was
cheating on the
shrimp
spoilers here.
boating the other day. No, I used a giant
I'd
shrimp.
like to be
I made.
say in an octopus's garden.
Sorry,
in the
I
shade.
made a giant mutant shrimp and I unleashed it on New York City. Uh, Rorschach
That's a lot of
Rorschach is trying to kick me in the buttocks. What am I doing with my life? But anyways, yeah. So as I was saying, there's a lot of characters to talk about. But what I find interesting is like every time I've read this book, I've read it over 10 times now, and I got into a pattern of doing is that I like to really put myself in the mindset of one character throughout the entire read through. So at first I did Rorschach, then I did Dr. Manhattan, then I did Dan Dryberg because he's kind of the character I relate to the most, honestly, and also Laurie, even Ozymandias. Ozymandias is interesting because like what he did was terrible, but I see his point too. Like it's you know that meme from Falcon and the Winter Soldier.
Thanos was right.
No, not that one with Helmut Zemo.
Oh yeah.
He's awful, but he has a point.
Yeah. No, that's no. Baron.
Baron Zemo, yeah.
Baron Zemo. Sorry.
His name's Helmet, yeah.
Oh, fuck. All right. Because I thought you were talking about
Zemo's Helmet.
Okay, yeah, great. Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, like if I could break down each character really quickly, you have Comedian, who was like a long-running superhero, even from like the early '40s, and his life of fighting crime eventually eroded his personality and his morals to the point where he just became an unscrupulous, essentially mercenary, and a high contracts
I like
soldier.
how you're talking about Comedian, and I talked about he's like the he's one of the he's like the most sociopathic, zero fucks giving characters that ties the story together.
Oh yeah,
but Dallas Winston ties the outsiders together in very much a similar way.
yeah.
Now you're just making me imagine Matt Dillon as Rorschach.
Matt Dillon is.
Oh my god, imagine.
Matt Dillon.
I feel like there could be a rumble in Watchmen.
Yeah, there's a lot of fights in Watchmen.
Same grimdark.
Although it's never the focus of the story. That's one thing Zack Snyder kind of over embellished, if I'm being honest, is all the graphic violence. But I'll talk more about the movie and how I felt about it later. Yeah, and it's like Comedian's just a horrible human being. There's no denying, but yet you kind of like see a lot of like his pain and a lot of the stuff he has to live through, especially near the latter half of the book when a big twist is revealed. And then there's Laurie Jushpesh, also known as Silk Spectre 2. Oh, sorry, not Laurie. Sally Jupiter.
Sally Jupiter.
There's also Sally Jupiter, also known as Silk Spectre 2, who was basically trained as a child to be a superhero by her mom, who was like one of the biggest.
So you might say she was fighting evil by moonlight, but winning love by daylight. Never running from a real fight. She is the one named Silk Spectre 2.
Spots of Jupiter in her hair.
Oh Lord.
Tell me,
deep cuts.
did you end up on Mars with a giant blue dong man?
Oh, you're. How? What are you, 12?
She's blue. Da ba dee da ba da.
Yeah, we had to go. Just do that one too. Yeah, and she's kind of disenfranchised with being a superhero because she got pressured by her mom to do it, and she never really forged her own like goals in life, and she kind of just she feels kind of led on a leash throughout most of it, especially with her relationship with Dr. Manhattan being a government mandated thing to keep him neutralized. Speaking of which,
okay.
Yeah, and speaking of Dr. Manhattan, you have John Osterman, who in a very tragic set of events was completely disintegrated by an energy reactor, but somehow managed to like refabricate himself into a superhuman being, which is like beyond anything that we could possibly understand. He's not omnipotent, as he says, but he sees time very differently. And he's so like detached from humanity and everything that he barely sees the point of even staying on Earth, which is why, again, Laurie has to be there to keep him neutralized because she's the only thing that kind of keeps them together. I really that whole section with him like just meditating on Mars and him like looking back all the way to his origin to like several different parts of his life. That's probably one of my favorite uses of montage I've ever seen inside of a storytelling perspective. In the movie, they do it beautifully too, especially when it's set to Philip Glass music. Ew. And then
Excellent.
yeah, what's another character? We also have Dan Dryberg, also known as Night Owl 2, who's Batman, but not. He has all the gadgets. He has all the.
Still, we probably should fight him like he is Batman, so he's not.
He's not. He's a little rough around the edges, to be honest. Well, actually, he's kind of like wishy-washy. He's probably the nicest member of the team, but at the same time, he's just like he's doing nothing, man. He's kind of like the guy. He's kind of like how I felt during COVID. Like I'm literally just kind of going day by day right now. I feel like I hang out with my old friend. It was the original Night Owl, and that's about it. But I always liked his suit. I always liked how he's kind of like he just has no layer of coolness to him. Like he comes out, he looks. There's like this dorky aspect to him that I always kind of find slightly endearing, which is kind of nice because in a story like Watchmen, you need characters who you can kind of empathize with. They can't all be dark and miserable people. But yeah, the fact that he kind of needs the super suit to like feel in any way useful is probably not a good thing. I'm gonna say taking your anger out on other people as a means of calling it justice. Yeah, it's the very reason why vigilantism is not looked upon very nicely. Who watches the Watchmen? And then I think is there anyone else? I should probably touch on Ozymandias too. The billionaire playboy philanthropist who basically retired early before anyone else did, before the Keene Act was even in place, and he got to be a media mogul and own his own empire. So, yeah, it's a big success. I really hope he doesn't do anything.
He's the Elon Musk of that universe.
He is very much the Elon Musk. And I would love to see him throw a rock at one of his own cars and just go like, it's bulletproof, yeah. Well, it is bulletproof. He can catch a bullet in midair. He takes that ball and reverts it, you know? But yeah, anyways. And then there's Rorschach. Can't forget him. The tragic character, just, well, not even tragic, he just had like a horrible upbringing, which, didn't actually shift him that badly as a person. It just made him want to fight crime and do better, and he has a very set, kind of right-leaning principles, but still, it's not until he has a very, very bad night that he kind of shifts in personality and becomes a lot more brutal and unforgiving. And yeah, it's interesting hearing how his mind works. There's even an entire section of the book that's devoted to like his backstory and like why he is the way he is. And it's so haunting that his own psychologist kind of loses faith in humanity afterwards. So there that goes. If I had to pick a favorite section of Watchmen that I always enjoy reading, there's like the Dr. Manhattan meditation. The jailbreak sequence is pretty fun. I like Rorschach's banter with Big Figure. Big Figure, small world. Never disposed of garbage with a toilet before. Figures, really. None of you seem to understand. I'm not locked in here with you. You're locked in here with me. And there's that.
Get over here.
Get over here. I'm not Batman. Rorschach
wins. Ink out.
Tell me, Doctor. What do you see? And I also like the section where like I like the ending quite a bit for Watchmen too. Even the epilogue. There's just so many things I like about this book that I could honestly just go on and on and on. But I guess like I always tend to like study like how comics are like especially the layout of a comic. I always like to investigate those sort of things because it's kind of like writing it's all sequential and every box has a certain like there's an intent behind every single piece of layout in a comic. So one thing Watchmen does that it became pretty like well known for is the 9-panel spread, where it's 3 by 3 by 3. So every single box is the same size. There's none that really have like an actual. What's the word I'm saying? No box is more important than the other, and there's nothing diminished. It's almost like watching something in real time. And apparently, modern comics, when they do that, it's called hacky. But when Watchmen does it, it's celebrated. So, all right. What's your favorite part of the book, Josh? I don't know how long it's been since you read it.
I know. I think a mutual friend of Evan and ours introduced it to us in high school. I think it was on the bus one day. Might have been coming back from school, and I read it. And I mean, I enjoyed. I think more I like the whole idea of it's an alternate timeline where, for a time superheroes are accepted and embraced, but then of course there's the turning point, and then everything's outlawed because having seen other pieces of media like The Incredibles, where it's basically, I mean, The Incredibles is really Watchmen for kids
It so is.
in a lot of ways. Not
There's
like
even
obviously one to one, but with the main villain of that having a similar
there's even an
sort of focus.
octopus-looking thing that tries to destroy the city at the end.
I,
Holy
I mean,
shit!
I'll admit I didn't understand the graphic novel a lot when I was in high school because this was right at this. I got into it right around or just after the time the film came out, so this was grade 11, and I mean, I remember Rorschach just because like his backstory stands out more.
Yeah,
I kind of felt like the comedian's more just the catalyst to get everyone together. You learn a bit about him, but it's interesting to just hear about the all the lore of what started out as the Minutemen and then sort of evolved with time. But
hmm
then obviously going forward and seeing the film and learning more about the development hell that went through for literal decades before that got made. And then even a show like The Boys, it's like The Boys is basically another example of alternate timeline where superheroes are like, mega celebrities, but it's more like it's starting to slip more. It slips more towards Watchmen territory, where like you see behind the facade.
absolutely. And it's interesting you bring the Incredibles because yeah, there's definitely like the kids' version of this. I heard Brad Bird had to defend it. It's like I've actually never read Watchmen before. It was just an idea I had, and like he's never read the Fantastic Four. He's never read Watchmen. He's never. I mean, this is what he claims.
Uh,
But yeah,
I feel like you would have had to have heard of it though. That's the thing. You can not read something, but hear things from people about it and put together your own
yeah,
interpretations.
your college roommate could come up. It's like, hey man, I read this comic where like superheroes are like illegal, but some of them still do it, and it's awesome. It's like that's a pretty good idea. Now,
Well,
what if
it's
it was?
just basically another type of prohibition.
Yeah, exactly. Prohibition. It covers that a lot too.
Ooh, superhero speakeasies. There's an idea. I don't know what you expect to find in an ordinary pet shop.
That's like it's like how it should have ended. Villains Pub. Remember that YouTube channel?
Oh yeah, that one that like gets overexposed.
Yeah,
And even
just
looking at the adaptation of Watchmen, it's like I mean, Alan Moore is a comic creator. It's very much like he's very clearly outspoken. I think that's why he gets a lot of respect. But
yeah.
like just to see that like they started working on this thing like in the mid '80s, and it took almost 25 years for it to actually get finished.
Yeah, I actually found. I was at a used bookstore. I found an old Watchmen script that was written by
Wow,
Sam.
that's
It
amazing.
was written by Sam Hamm, who wrote the first.
Sam he would not have green eggs and ham.
Yeah, he's the writer who wrote the first Batman movie from 1989. He was
That's
tasked to
sweet.
write Watchmen, and it's I don't know, it's kind of weird. Like he was like, oh, Sylvester Stallone needs to be the comedian. Robin Williams needs to be Rorschach. Get Jamie Lee Curtis as Silk Spectre too. It's gonna be a good movie. And I'm like, all right. There's a scene where like Rorschach's like in the
Watchmen kills.
he's in the therapy session. It's like, so what do you do? What do you like? What do you like, Walter? It's like, I like to masturbate. And it's like, no, I don't need to. I don't need him to talk like that. And he wouldn't
I
talk like
can't
that.
even imagine the alternate timeline where Warner Brothers puts this out, but Terry Gilliam directs it.
Oh, that'd be different. Yeah, the
That's fascinating.
Brazilian Watchman. Yeah, but I guess on the topic of the movie, I think Zack Snyder. I honestly, I think it's my favorite work of his. I'm not often fond of his work, but I think it's the one I've watched the most. I've watched both the theatrical director and ultimate cut. I prefer the director's cut the most because it has less flab than the ultimate cut. The ultimate cut just includes tales from the Black Freighter, from the throughout the comic, they have like this sub story where it's like a guy who goes on a revenge quest against pirates.
Oh, does that mean HBO Max is going to have a freighter miniseries?
There actually was a miniseries. It was released on DVD, so it was like an animated,
I think I remember that actually.
an
Yeah.
animated like an animated comic sort of thing. I didn't
There
watch
was
it.
even 1 or 2 video games related to Watchmen.
Yeah, I played both of them.
I remember one of them.
Watchmen: The End Is Nigh.
That one, The End Is Now. It was on. I remember it being on PS3 for a while.
Yeah, I found another used DVD store. It's like you can have the director's cut and the video game on PS3, and I'm like, all right, cool.
Oh
And
yeah, that was the thing with some PS3 games. Like it's a movie and it's a game, kind of, but not really.
Yeah, and then I played it, and I'm like, this is fucking boring. It's just you endlessly punching like rooms and rooms of guys for like 4 hours, and
But see, the raid is basically that.
yeah, true. Well, it's not for 4 hours though.
And what is it for 2 hours?
Yeah, roughly 2 hours. It is funny though because there's one moment where like Night Owl's in a sex dungeon, and you fight these big fat gimp
Are we
guys.
sure we're not in the Saints Row game now?
And where he just like if you do a finisher on one of these big fat gimp guys, it's like Dan just grabs his.
That is literally, I feel like a mission in Saints Row 4's DLC.
Yeah, but like he rips the paddle out of the guy's hand, whacks him in the ass with it, and the guy's like, oh, and he just smashes it over his head. That was a good game. Oh, what am I saying? It wasn't a terrible game, but
It wasn't great, but
for a movie license game, I mean, it's cool that you get to play as Dan and Rorschach back when they were, active.
Sorry, I've been quiet because I've stepped away, but I know exactly what you're talking about, and I want to play this game too.
Oh, you want to play it?
Yeah, Watchmen.
you can
Under
probably
the-
find
what's it
it
called
if you know
again?
where to
The
look.
End Is Nigh.
The End Is Nigh, right?
Parts 1 and 2.
Doesn't that talk about the days when like him and Night Owl were going up against Big Figure?
Yeah, you fight Big Figure and Lady Midnight, I believe her name is.
Hey, speaking of deep cuts, the same actor who plays Big Figure in in the movie is also in Death to Smoochie, which I love.
Yeah, that's right.
Wow.
Yeah.
There's a connection.
Yeah.
The fascinating thing about the film adaptation is, I think, in some ways, again, I think Evan actually might have talked about it in the soundtrack edition episode. The soundtrack sort of overshadows the film at times.
Some of the
sense of,
needle
like-
drops are a little obvious, I won't lie.
Yeah.
But some of them are good.
I gotta be honest. Going back to our cliches episode, I would put Watchmen in the category of on the nose soundtrack drops done correctly,
Alright.
because like, and not every soundtrack drop is on the nose too. Like sometimes,
Yeah, but I said some.
some, not all. Like the times they are changing. Okay, that was on the
That
nose.
opening sequence is really good.
Yeah, it's great. A great montage to a great song, but
It's
I just
interest-
remember My Chemical Romance covering Desolation Row.
in the
Oh,
credits,
yeah. And it's interesting because Alan Moore vehemently dislikes it when his work gets adapted. 'Cause
He-
you have like
he hasn't
So
seen-
he is a hipster, but he was okay with being in The Simpsons, though, right? Because that's not super mainstream.
well,
Lil Lulu, I love
Yeah.
you just the same.
But that's as an aside. That episode where he was in The Simpsons, it was kind of interesting and topical now because what other comic creators was he in that episode? It was Husbands and Knives.
Is that the one where
It
Homer
was.
That's the one where Homer gets plastic surgery, right?
It was
Oh, yeah.
Dan Clowes and Art Spiegelman.
Yeah, Dan Clowes.
Very topical with that last one. If you know, you know.
What?
Art Spiegelman, creator of Mouse.
Oh yes, Mouse. Right.
Very topical now.
How come?
Well, because in the last couple of months, this is an aside, but I think as of the last couple of months, apparently Mouse is being banned in some schools.
Oh,
I
yes!
keep hearing about that for the past decade. Yeah.
Those damn
Yeah.
Republicans.
It's more an American issue, but I remember reading Mouse in high school, and it was like getting into Watchmen and Mouse around the same time. I don't think I had seen the episode of that Simpsons yet. That
Yo,
they had,
Josh,
they were in.
I'm
I
just,
need to read that.
I'm
book.
just shaking my fist, going, "Red States!"
Yeah.
Old man yells at cloud.
Pretty much.
Yeah, 'cause,
No,
like,
young millennial yells at politicians.
The point being that Watchmen itself is it is sort of ahead of the curve in terms of like, what if superheroes were illegal and all that, but I guess it gets the point across,
Yeah.
but it still kind of ends on a bit of a dour note.
yeah. It's like, what do you do, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, the
You
secret.
leave New York City. That's what you do.
Yeah.
The gang goes on a road trip. This time on It's Always Sunny in Hell.
It's always sunny in Dan's basement.
Mm.
What was I gonna say? Yeah, because the last section of the book, it asks the question like, yeah, you sacrificed millions to save billions, and if the secret's out, then it's all for nothing. And I thought that was definitely interesting. A lot of people were like, "Oh, Thanos won in Infinity War," and it's like some guy beat you to it, and he wears a tunic.
Yeah. He's also human. He's not an alien.
I thought he was. Is he human or is he dancer?
Hmm.
I don't have too much more to say about Watchmen. I think I said my piece. I think Zack Snyder did a commendable job adapting it. With a few of his excesses here and there, but other than that, I do like the adaptation.
Yeah.
It's probably one of the stronger adaptations of a graphic novel next to like Ghost World or something like that.
Yeah.
Also by Daniel Klaus. Why don't we bring him up?
I almost heard Discworld, but that's another like Terry Pratchett related, Monty Python affiliated thing.
Yeah, because like Alan Moore adaptations, yeah, League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, which I kind of like, even though it's not great. They have From Hell with Johnny Depp. I haven't seen that one. V for Vendetta, which is actually pretty nice,
That's
pretty
a
well
good
done.
movie.
Yeah, that's it. That would be an interesting discussion for another time because I feel like the meaning of that one's kind of been, I wouldn't say co-opted, but it's changed a lot since it came out.
Yeah.
The film at least.
Yeah, I'm surprised that Alan Moore doesn't like that one either. And yeah, and there's an HBO show now for Watchmen. I haven't watched it yet.
Oh yes, I've heard of that.
Yeah.
I've heard of it.
I hear some people like it, some people really hate it because they turn Rorschach into a neo-Nazi figurehead.
Are we sure we're not getting V for Vendetta and Watchmen mixed up there, writers?
Right.
Because Rorschach was like a consumer of far right propaganda in his non superhero life in New York. Because he's always going to buy those right wing comics from that guy who works at the corner.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
How could you, comic book guy?
Yeah. I like how the dude reading Tales from the Black Freighter. I don't know if you guys talked about this while I was away.
Yeah, we talked
we
about
did.
Tales from the Black Freighter.
Sorry, but I like how the guy who was reading Tales from the Black Freighter befriends the
vendor.
the vendor at the end, right before
Vendors assemble.
Vendors assemble.
Yes.
And it all lies on poor innocent Seymour to have the cat out of the bag in the end. It's a very good cliffhanger.
But Superintendent Chalmers, Ronald Reagan's thinking of running for president in 1988. We could write a piece on that.
Well, this has been wonderful.
Yeah, I remember you were the one who suggested this idea, Josh, and it's a nice change in pace.
And
I agree. And what's interesting is that all of us live not too far from libraries.
That's true.
You walk out our front door, you see a library.
Yeah, so if any of what we talked about interested you, audience, you can very easily go to your local library or, read an ebook, an audiobook of any of these. And, I mean, as an aside, I always loved as a kid when there was that sort of deer time at school or, like, at home, which was drop everything and read. So, like, there was that hour or, like, a bit of time where you had to sit down and read stuff. So it almost, I wouldn't say forced you to
do you boys remember those little brochures that came every month?
Book orders.
Book orders.
The book orders.
I spent so much money on those.
And then twice a year you saw the crates in the library. That could only mean one thing.
Book fairs were my life as a kid.
Yes. Book fairs were wonderful. Yes.
No, in our elementary school, book fair week was like a carnival. It was awesome.
It was
delightful.
Like
the equivalent of, Super Bowl weekend for football fans. It's like everybody's in there, everybody's reading. I mean, I would even, like, some days during lunch recess, during book fairs, I'd literally just go to the library and read all the new books there. It's almost like a try before you buy kind of thing. I'd read the book to decide whether it'd be worth getting or not.
Yeah. Oh, that's nice. Yeah. And you always had that smell of the rubber erasers in the air.
Yes,
all that fresh scholastic smell.
Yeah.
So good.
Anyways, well, we've covered a lot. Like, this has been a lot of fun, and
it sure has.
I mean, I closed the book on my end, but our book, if life's a book, we're always going to be writing it. We're always going to be adding chapters.
Yes, that's why you need a good editor.
Though the pages are numbered, I can't see where they lead. For the end is a mystery no one can read in the book of my life.
Nice.